Hello and welcome to the Silent Evil Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I am Cameron.
We're coming at you with a brand new game, Cronos The New Dawn from Bloober Team. Even though I'm pretty sure that they're all Eastern European, so they're not thinking of it that way. It just sounds like the most hillbilly name when I say, like, what team are you on? We're Bloober Team. Bloober. You know, which really, I actually had no idea about Bloober Team other than the fact that when you mentioned that those were the guys who did the remaster of Silent Hill 2, and then while playing Cronos New Dawn, I'm like, I'm gonna go see what the heck these other games are, and then it's like, oh, I've seen these games pop up on Xbox, Nintendo, Steam, PlayStation, yada yada yada, like the 4 other games they have. I'm like, I see those there all the time. You know, never paid any attention to any of them and anything like that. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, those other games, except for I think there's that one Medium. That one I think looks kind of like a legitimate game. The other 3 or 4 that they have kind of beforehand, or maybe even 5, like I think was there Layers of Fear and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. They always just kind of looked. I'm not saying I've never tried them, but they always kind of look like, oh, okay, just here's one of those like cheap indie like first person view.
Oh, they're AA games, absolutely.
You know, so yeah, I always kind of looked at them pop up, and they like you see them on the sale chart or something like that. You're like, oh, that looks just whatever. You know, you look at it and go, hey, okay, move along and so on. So I never put too much thought into any of those ones there. And then it's kind of funny because you see all those games, you go, wow, you know, you did a handful of these games and you got the Silent Hill 2 remake. I mean, like, talk about like that's not just any game you're remaking, you know, that's probably like in like the top 10, like, yeah, top 10, like, don't mess this up now kind of games, you know what I mean? That fits in there. It's like Silent Hill 2. Metal Gear Solid. If you had to remake Resident Evil again, you know, they're like those are those like very high bar ones. So it's actually kind of mind blowing that that's the team it did. But it's actually kind of cool that that's where it all leads to. And then we get here to Cronos, where it feels like, okay, now they got some money in their pocket. Here they're going to do the big game that they've always kind of wanted to do, you know, and do it all kind of in a sense original, yet, you know, nicely inspired from many great things like The Thing, Dead Space, and of course Resident Evil and Silent Hill. But yeah, Cronos, we're jumping into this. We did a good old playthrough. I know Cameron, I think, even did a second run.
Almost.
Yeah,
about halfway through.
I attempted to do a second run, but I was doing it off my phone because I noticed that you could stream this game on Xbox, and I was like, "Oh, sweet!" And then I was like, on the phone, it was like I got to like literally like maybe like 5 minutes in the game. I'm like, I can't see a single thing. The game is so dark on the phone that it's like this game was never meant to be a Game Boy game.
Oh yeah.
You know, because even on like the Xbox version that I was playing it on, dude, I cranked that brightness up. Like mine just looked like it was like literally like a burnt image almost. It was just all white and it was like way too dark. It's kind of like whenever they have those things, I always feel like they'll show them in games where it's like, okay, there's 3 images here. You're supposed to see this one clearly, the middle one you're supposed to barely see, and the right one you're supposed to not see at all. I always go, no, I crank it all the way up till I see that right image clearly. Yeah. If I can see the right image clearly, then the game's probably good. I don't care. I don't care about your graphics right now. Like I need to see some stuff, you know. So I had to crank that up for sure on this game because it is dark. It is very dark,
very dark.
You know, and they take too much advantage of that HDR.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it, you know. So like I get to experience it not only in like a weird aspect ratio and ultra wide, so it looks really fucking good in ultra wide, but having an OLED panel mixed with HDR. Yeah, this game is like, its blacks are fucking black. Like you can't see shit. But I also think like it builds so much tension. The start of this game has so much like just dread darkness to it, you know, like dark hallways and things like that. So I think it plays very well into its art design. It's the way that they just like visually made this game. I think it totally plays into it. Plus we get this really cool, you know, Silent Hill 2 feature more or less that's just fog, you know, and like volumetric fog in this game is gorgeous. You know, being able to see it like off in the distance, like, you know, some light source like off in the distance, and seeing the light bleed, you know, like through the fog effects and things like that, and just, oh dude, it's so good. But that's Unreal, you know, like that's Unreal Engine. You know, like, yeah. And thank God, an Unreal Engine game that actually works. You know, like there was a couple crash points in this game that I got to experience, mostly in cutscenes during transitions. But for the most part, the game just worked, you know, and I was super stoked with that. It's the first UE5 game this year that I'm just like was able to essentially play flawlessly, you know. So
Yeah, exactly. It's just so weird how that just it just always fails on you for those initial week or two. Yeah, I think on Xbox, I think I had a single issue. I'm trying to think if the game froze on me once, you know. No,
yeah,
I think it just was straightforward. I think one time it closed itself, but like that was about it, not like for any real reason. But yeah, straightforward. Now, granted, I will say when this game first started off, though, and I mean, you do get that atmosphere of like they give you all these questions, and you're just this like robot thing. You know, you don't even know what you are. You're just like, okay, here's some spacesuit looking thing, kind of similar to maybe you would almost say Dead Space, similar to Soma that we played not too long ago, and so on like that. But this is one of those games I knew nothing going into it. I just saw like that split second like gameplay trailer you showed me, and I was like, well, that looks badass. That's all I need to know. Looks like kind of Resident Evil / Metroid / Dead Space. Cool. You know, I'm down. And so I had no idea what the story was. I didn't know what the characters were or anything like that. And here you are, is this, you know, just it looks like you're in, you know, your spacesuit and you're kind of hanging here and they're asking you these questions and so on. And you're just kind of answering them. And I think it's almost like one of those Soma things where it makes no difference. Like it doesn't affect it. It's just like a you thing. You know, it's not like Silent Hill, Shattered Memories where like every single one of them, you're like, like, I don't get the bad dad ending.
Don't give me party dad. Don't give me party dad, please.
You know, because that game made me really think about that a lot more as your actions and so on like that. Where like in this one, you just kind of answer them as is. I mean, there's even one, I think the last question, it's the exact same thing, but there's 1 and 2. So you're like, what's the difference between 1 and 2 here?
Yeah. So, I mean, even doing my second run through, because I was thinking about that, you know, like, because like Spence was saying, right at the very start of the game, you essentially wake up like in this, you know, mechanical body, and you have this like computer talking to you, and it's asking you all these questions, and it's like one of those diagrams that like shows you like a random splotch of ink, and it's just like, what do you think this is? You know, is it? And it gives you a couple of choices, and you choose through it or whatever. I don't think that has any difference whatsoever, like at all. Even as far as I've gotten, because I'm back in the hospital section, so I'm pretty deep into the game again, you know, and like nothing's changed, you know. It's like it's more or less like still the same story, it's still the same, you know, whatnot. There's some variations that'll happen like deeper later in terms of its endings that we'll talk about later, but outside of that, like I really don't think those questions have much to do with anything. Could be wrong though, who knows. If
they do, they're very micro or something like that, because when they show you those Rorschach pictures or whatever, it mostly asks you one thing. It's just like it'll give you kind of like a violent answer, like what do you think this is, like an explosion or like a breath of, you know, fresh air or something like that, and then like what's this, a great flood, or is this like, you know, a flower blooming kind of thing. You know, and it's like that's kind of what it is. And on that second playthrough, for the little bit that I did get through, I was like, I just answered them kind of like the exact opposite of what I thought I answered them previously, you know, just to see. But yeah, as the game kind of gets going, tells you nothing. You just kind of like, okay, here you go. You're on this mission. You know, go ahead, start walking your way through here. And, you know, gameplay wise, it's very that Resident Evil 4 style, which is funny because I started thinking about that. I was like, that's kind of amazing that the Resident Evil 4 gameplay is still kind of like the go-to gameplay style. Literally more than 20 years later by now, like the survival horror, like that over the shoulder, like pretty much not that much radically different than Resident Evil 4, you know, maybe a little bit more control, but that's about it. It's funny how it's like that stayed about the same since then. You know,
and you listen to, you know, I've done some little bit of post research stuff on this, and you listen to the developer talk about them creating this game and whatnot, and the direct mirrors between. So they've done like Spence had mentioned, Layers of Fear was a game title that they had. There's a few variations of that. I think there's like 3 titles within that IP. I personally played this one, hated it at the time. Probably need to go back and replay it again now that I know who Bloober is and whatnot. But I did Blair Witch, came out in 2019. They did that.
So they did have one, I guess, media tie-in game.
But it was awful, dude. It was bad. Like, it really wasn't good. You know, like, I probably played a good, like, 3 hours of it, and I was just like nothing is happening, really, you know, like, and its tension wasn't great, and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, like, that was a failed attempt, in my opinion. The Medium, I've never played, but I've watched a lot of reviews. I've watched a lot of gameplay on it, whatnot. And what was really, really interesting about that title is that they had it's kind of like this game has to an extent, but the medium has its dark and light side versions of its world or whatever that are directly mirrored to each other. And what was really neat about the tech at that time is that they were utilizing the tech running in real time at the same time or whatever. So like it was a insanely CPU intensive game, back then or whatever. So you see a lot of direct mirrors of Cronos out of that, with those types of design ideals. We see a lot. I caught so many different, like almost one-to-one direct mirrors of like what they did in Silent Hill 2 to this game. And it mostly is centered around character design and like, character emotion and cutscenes and things like that, like are so similar to what they did in Silent Hill 2. So I think that this game in general is just like a culmination of Bloober's just like, here's all the shit we've done for the last 10, 15 years or whatever, and this is our brand new IP that we're going to give it a shot at. You mentioning Resident Evil 4, is funny because the developer straight references that. He talks about, like Resident Evil 4 was like the core basis of like their game design in terms of mechanics of what they wanted to do, which is funny because Dead Space is a direct not a direct copy, but like a direct inspiration from Resident Evil 4, which you see the body horror of Dead Space in this game, and like that type of stuff and whatnot. So like, yeah, I mean, yeah, like I think Bloober in general just like nailed it out of the park with this game. There's some things that can be done in terms of a sequel that I'll get to once we get through the endings and whatnot, on like what kind of my thought theory of what's going on in this game and whatnot. But there's a lot to talk about in this title, that I think they did very, very well. So,
oh yeah, most definitely. And the Dead Space, like, because it does kind of have that, like right off the bat, you see the Dead Space-ness. And I remember when Dead Space first came out, the first thing I thought when I played it was like, oh, it's like someone fused Resident Evil and Metroid together. That was what Dead Space felt like 100%. Because a lot of times people don't think about it, but Metroid's actually pretty close to being like a survival horror, because it gets pretty scary in that game, and you're just kind of out there just exploring this weird alien planet. It's some of those games, it's like Metroid and then also Tomb Raider, like two games that people don't think of survival horror right off the bat, but I'm like, dude, I've gotten more scared in those games than I have in other ones. You know what I mean? So,
yep.
But yeah, like beyond that, it's like, and then the other big thing I'd say is, okay, if the control scheme is definitely very Resident Evil oriented, I also think the movie Thing, I guess you could even say the game Thing nowadays, but I feel like there's a lot of that in there too, where you have these creatures that literally absorb into each other and so on like that. Like that's literally a main thing that you're supposed to stop, because you don't realize it until you beat the game and you see your ending, score like Resident Evil style. But it says how many enemies have like absorbed into each other and so on like that. Because what will happen is there'll be all these dead bodies laying around, and then when the enemies come out, they'll start to like shoot their like tentacles and arms or whatnot, and they'll just start absorbing the dead bodies and then become a stronger, more pain in the ass enemy. So it's like I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, oh hell no! I ran over there, I threw the little firebomb down, like, don't you dare do this.
Yeah, and that's really what sets this game apart from, because I think that it's probably its closest direct mirror is probably Dead Space in terms of its gunplay, its movement, its mechanics, things like that. I think that's the piece that sets this game apart, is the name of the game. You don't want shit to morph, because you have like your standard enemy, starts off like what I was thinking of the entire time is just like a tier system, more or less. Tier 1, very basic, very squishy, like pretty easy to manage type enemy type or whatever. It absorbs the first one, then you get into tier 1, and then it starts to like, it basically like grows armor or like these like spiky looking things out of it or whatever. It becomes a lot more harder to kill, and then it evolves again, and like the level 2 or 3 or whatever you want to call it, like its max like absorption, whatever. Those are the biggest pain in the fucking ass, especially early on in this game, dude. I didn't realize the very first time that I was watching an absorption happen, I didn't really realize like what was going on. I was like, oh, that's fucking weird. Like, what is it? Is it just regaining health? What is it doing? And then I see it like physically change in front of me, and it grows all this armor and shit. And I'm like, oh fuck, I only have 2 bullets left. Like, what? Uh-oh, because I think that's a whole other piece of this game that's, I think anybody that starts this is going to experience right off the bat. This game is fucking hard, like right out the get go. It is fucking hard, and it gets easier over time. But Yeah,
Yeah,
it's first
well, that
2
was
hours.
yeah. When I was first starting this one up, and we were texting back and forth, and I was like, "Is this game gonna be one of those ones that every single new area I come into, I'm gonna die like 5 times before like I get through it?" Because I was like, "This is gonna be a long journey if this is the case."
Yeah.
You know, because at first I was like, I was like, I mean, I liked it, but I was just like, dude, just each area you go to, it's like, okay, I got like 5 shots. Oh, great, now there's 6 enemies. Okay, they definitely are spongy guys and so on. In the very beginning, your pistol kind of wobbles and so on. So good luck getting that headshot right off the bat. Especially with even the controller, because you're playing with mouse. I do feel that probably adds that extra preciseness that that is always kind of necessary. But I guess if you're playing
admittedly, like I was worried at first when we first got going on this game. I started playing it, and like, because I recognized pretty quickly, I'm like, okay, like this is hard on mouse and keyboard, and I have options to like. I can keep. I'm sure you can do this on a controller too. It's probably just a pain in the ass to like get the sticks orientated the right way. But I can just hold S, dude, and like my character just starts running back towards me, like in the screen or whatever, and I can still keep facing, the way of the enemy, but run away from him, towards my screen, and like literally, it's just right click, the character automatically spins around, the way I'm facing, the camera's facing anyways. Charge up my shot, take that pistol shot, hold S, let go of the R1 to aim down sights, and I just keep running away. And it's like it was easier, because I did try it with controller, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, this is what Spence is talking about. I'm like, this is fucking hard, to like actually aim. But so
yeah, because there's just that little bit of wobble and so on. And I want to say, I don't think I could run with the controller. I don't think I could run away while still looking that direction.
Really?
I think that would have flopped the camera around on me.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit, but I think it would have turned eventually.
Yeah.
But granted, I will say the beginning part, though, that was getting to that point where I was like, dude, is this going to be what this game's like the whole time? Like, because this game has no difficulty. Let's just say that right off the bat, too. This game kind of starts off on hard, And a lot of times when it comes to survival horror games, most of the first time I always play them, I always kind of gravitate towards like the easy mode on them. Because I'm like, for a lot of games, it's like there's going to be so much other stuff in the game that's going to be just hard enough as is, figuring out puzzles, figuring out where to go, all that kind of things, that's difficult enough that you don't need the monsters on top of it to be having to take 3 times more shots. Now this one, on the other hand, at least you never get really lost in the game. It doesn't really have puzzles or anything of that nature, so that part's pretty linear. So in a sense, that's there. Now the monsters and the battling is just the only place where the difficulty really stands, and so on like that. But at first I was just like, wow, that's kind of surprising. No other difficulty and so on. But after about maybe the first 3 or 4 areas that were kind of like tough and so on, and once you kind of get a little bit of handle on it, there was one area in particular where it was making me starting to question. Is you literally jump down this one place, and it's the first time you find the fire bombs, and you don't. And at first you was like, cool, okay, I got one, okay, nice, and then you go in there, and it's towards the exit, a bunch of guys start, morphing and appearing and all this kind of stuff. So you're like, oh, okay, fight them off. Of course, that's where you start seeing the first one try to absorb and everything like that. And I went through that like twice, and then I realized, oh, that firebomb keeps respawning. So what I'm going to do is go grab that firebomb. I'm going to burn every single corpse in this area, because that's another feature they have, is like you can burn the bodies almost like Resident Evil the remake, and in this one, just so they don't absorb, or anything like that. So I went around and just collected, burned, and then of course like 6 more enemies still drop in, but at least none of them could absorb. And I just fought those last ones off, and I was like, okay, that's not so bad there. We'll carry on.
Well, and I was really worried, because like you were texting me the way you were, just like, damn, like this is really hard. I start playing, and I'm like, damn, this is really hard. There's a fucking tooltip at the start of the game that's just like, learn from death, like blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh fuck, is this gonna be a Souls experience? Like shit, But arguably, yes, you cannot. I mean, you can. Especially now, like in New Game Plus, like I can run through the game. I can sprint. I can, just like two shot charged headshots, taking out enemies hella quick, super easy or whatever. This game is not designed to be that, though. I think on first playthrough, first run of the game, you just have to play slow, and that's inevitably how I did, which probably padded some of the time, like that it took me to actually play through the game, because this is pretty lengthy, I think.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I don't know, like I feel that I'm gonna skip and I'll come back to that thought, but yeah, I think in general, just like the game is pretty lengthy. If you play it slow, and if you like really check your corners, you check because there's so many like side rooms in this game that just give you extra ammo or currency or parts, materials, whatever, like things like that. If you're running through this game, you're gonna miss most of that, and I have a feeling it's gonna end up like me in a couple games ago, like getting stuck, like at the end of the game, like not being able to finish it with Parasite Eve. Take your time with this, because I really think like not only on top of being able to get like more ammo and resources or whatever, but just the notes of this game, like the way that it builds itself, because like I really didn't have a semblance of what the fuck is going on in the world of New Dawn, like even halfway through the game, I was like, what is this? Like, what is happening, here or whatever? And it slow leaks it to you, but the amount of like notes that you come across, and you're starting to learn about like, oh, there was a world-ending event that happened here, and blah blah blah, and like there's these things called the orphans, and there's these this thing called the collective, and and like you start to like read all these things or whatever, and like still to this day, we're a week post me finishing this. I've spent the last week like still just hyper questioning and thinking and researching, and I still don't have a total semblance of like what is really going on in Cronos The New Dawn. Got ideas, but but I think to round this back around, I think slow and steady gameplay is definitely the way to go, at least at the start of this game or whatever. Really take your time, pull one enemy at a time, and because you start to deal with multiple enemies, you're screwed. Like there's just not really all that much you can do, as weak as you are at the start of the game. So
yeah, I definitely think that is kind of the key thing. And yeah, it's one of these games where you're supposed to explore the living daylights out of everything, find as much money, find as much ammo and all that stuff, because it all comes in handy. Because that's what I did. I literally try to check every room. If I could tell that, like, oh, well, if door to the left is where it's supposed to be going, I'm going to go to door right first, make sure I get all that stuff, and so on. The other thing I will say, difficulty-wise, that I do give this game a lot of credit for is, for the most part, whenever you come up to a very difficult spot, which is always an indication that you are, the game saves with an autosave, which is nice, because that was another thing, too. I was like, dude, if this game relied on your regular saves, I would be like, dude, what the heck? You know what I mean? Some of those parts would be... So I'm glad it has that in there, because that's what I always call... I call it like, it's difficult, but it's forgiving, and to me, like, that's my favorite kind of difficulty, where it's like, you can have a hard as hell part, just make me restart on like the door beforehand. I mean, don't make me run through the whole rest of the level that I've already done. You know what I mean? Like, I've already beat all that stuff. I don't need to keep doing that over and over again. Just let me keep doing the same hard part over and over, and I'll eventually get through there. You know. And so that's kind of the cool thing on this one here, is it does do that, and then yeah, and then once you kind of figure out how the system worked, it was because one of those ones, like, I felt like I would get to an area for like the first, 5 or 6 areas where it's like, you go through, I died. Okay, go back again. I died. Okay, okay, made it through this time, and then so on. But probably about 25% of the game, like, I started just not dying. Like, it was one of those ones, and even through like the majority of the rest of the game, I almost rarely die. Like, sometimes it'd be more like I would do a restart. I would do like just a self restart. Would be like, hold on a second here. I felt like I spent a little too much ammo on this guy. The save point was only this far back. Reload. You know, or because all it takes is just like you miss a couple times. You're like, and there we go. There was some nice shotgun ammo that didn't see the light of day, and not getting that back. And I think that totally plays into your fairness topic and whatnot. This game is so hyper balanced. I can't tell you the amount of fights, encounters that I got into where I'm literally killing the last enemy with my last bullet, or my last flame round, or like whatever the fuck. Literally, like the amount of tension and getting by the skin of your teeth, as people like to say, like, is so real here. Like, there was so many times where I'm like in panic, just like I'm on my last
chunk of health. I got no more health items. I can't. I've expended all the resources in this arena. You know, like I've opened all the boxes. I've gotten all the ammo. Blah blah blah. Like I'm down to just being able to punch this fucking thing. You know, and like in the like, I mean, you get an ability later, you know, or an essence later, you know, that'll increase that. But like for me, like I meleeed that first encounter. Or at least like within the first handful of encounters, like shot the enemy, ran out of ammo, was just like, okay, the only thing I have left for an offensive ability is to just punch him, you know. So I punch, nothing happens, punch, nothing happens, punch, nothing happens, punch one more time, and then he finally falls over dead after sinking 6 rounds into him. I'm like, Jesus, you know, like that's a last ditch effort for me. But yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of another early complaint I had at first. I was like, dude, why is the melee attack so gosh darn weak on these things here? Like, literally, I was like, dude, I was punching an enemy. I was like, dude, like 12 times, and they got like 3 hits on me. I was like, well, this is silly. You know what I mean? And then you do get a perk later on that I did like, because I kept that. You get a melee perk where it says it increases it quite a bit. And then next thing you know, it's like any of the small enemies, I could literally punch them out before they even attacked me, you know? And then some of the armored enemies, this is one of the best parts about that ability. When you punched, you went right through the armor.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to like worry about shooting them in the right direction. Just punch them there. And then another tactic I even learned too is like, you know, you could just do the old classic, shoot them in the legs, and then you go over there and stomp them to death, you know, if you need to save some ammo. So there's a lot of variety you can kind of go about it. And as you were saying, the resources where like you kind of get down to like a battle and like, great, now I've got like, that was my last shot. I've used my firebomb, all this kind of stuff. The game always kind of did like, okay, cool. And then the next room you go to, and it's like, boop, there's all your ammo. There's some more health. There's like, I never felt, ironically, I never felt like I was ever low on anything. I was always like, you would be low for like a brief moment, and then all of a sudden you just totally reloaded again, you know? And you had multiple ways to do it. Like, not only would you find stuff, you could also purchase ammo if you need be. You could purchase health. You could find materials to craft stuff. Just had like light crafting in there, almost like Last of Us kind of style, where you just need like 2 items and like, boop, there you go. Make a med pack, make some shotgun ammo, make a new firebomb. And so I do give it kind of credit that like you never were totally like screwed over in the game. I guess the only time you would be is if you were going too fast, too soon.
Yeah. And I think that you know, get back to my comment about like play this game slow. It's like, because that will screw you. I feel anyways. You'll always have access to, you know, like you said, you know, ammo or resources or whatever. But I think this game also does, again, back to the balancing topic. Like, you know, you never feel like you're gonna like completely run out of ammo and screw yourself, but at the same time you don't feel like you're ever in abundance of any one thing, you know, like
no.
And you know, the way that the upgrade system works, you know, like of upgrading your weapons versus your armor versus like some of your toys that you have and whatnot, you know, like the pyro thing and whatnot. I think that all of that is very well balanced too, because I'm looking at the first, I think the very first upgrade to the pistol that you get, you know, is at least for your damage output or whatever, I think is like 1,200 credits or something like that, you know. And I'm like looking at that number and I'm picking up credits after credits of like 50 apiece, you know, here and there or whatever. And like by the time like I got to the first upgrade station, I think I had like, because I had saved all my currency up till that point and I had like 800, you know, and I was like, what the fuck? What do you do? You know, like this is going to be ridiculous. And it is. But I think in terms of its balance over the course of the full totality of the game, I didn't have that weapon fully upgraded until essentially the final area, you know, like, which felt really good. You know, every single upgrade that you get feels like a massive upgrade for your character in terms of power level and whatnot. All of that balancing I thought was so well done, you know, throughout the totality of the experience. You know, again, just everything matters. Every shot matters. You know, like Spence said, you know, like you miss a shot and you're like, oh, that hurts. You know, like you know. So
yeah, it's one of those ones. Yeah, when you shoot a couple rounds off and it just goes right over the dude's like shoulder, and you're like, gosh,
yep.
Like, you know, that's not coming back. You know,
I gotta find 3 fucking chemicals to make 5 bullets. God damn it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, that was like, because you do get farther in the game and you start locking some guns where they don't have the charge effect on, but they shoot multiple rounds. And I remember I tried that pistol out like once, and I was like, Yeah, this game doesn't give me a whole lot of rounds. I don't know if I want to be using a gun that shoots 3 rounds at the same time. You know, I did learn that everything kind of has its own purpose and stuff in it. Which the nice thing is they don't give you too many guns, because sometimes I think in some of these games you'll see it like they'll just start giving you all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'll even say Resident Evil 4 sort of does it, where they almost kind of give you more guns than you really need. I know that sounds like kind of being picky, but sometimes it's that kind of thing where it's just like, I mean, it's cool. You get variety. You can try different things out. You can have different runs. I'm not, more is probably better than not, but like sometimes it's that kind of thing where it's just like, just give me one good pistol, give me my one good shotgun, give me my one good, machine gun / rifle or whatever it is, and maybe the rocket launcher or something like that, and just let me just like have those, but be them like very like, upgradable and so on and all that kind of stuff. Which everything in this game gives you about double. There's like one, but pretty much it's either it gives you 2 different styles, and you can kind of choose. And one nice feature it does have, though, is, say if you blew all your money on one thing, and you go, oh man, I got this other way cooler gun. I'm kind of getting more used to that. For like $50, you can pretty much restart all those skills and then throw them all into another gun. Which I'm like, that's actually really cool. Yeah.
I mean, and going in with similar to Spence, I had no idea what this game really was going to be, other than like its initial trailer, from a couple of years ago or whatever, and then the launch trailer. I really didn't know like what to really expect. So like going in there with weapons or whatever, like having the pistol, the plasma cutter in Dead Space is arguably one of the best guns in the game if you fully upgrade it by the end. So I kind of went in with that mentality. I was just like, well, like the pistol's pretty good, and again, the way that the game's balanced and the way that it gives you more weapons throughout the game, like you don't get your second gun, the shotgun, until pretty Far in. Like I'd argue a couple hours, into the game or whatever. So with that, I was just like, okay, I saw that upgrade of like, okay, first damage increase is 1200. Like that's my goal. I'm just gonna fully upgrade this bitch. And thank God that they separated. So on top of being able to upgrade your weapons and whatnot, you can upgrade your suit, similar to Isaac Clarke and in Dead Space. Like you can increase your health, you can increase your backpack space, like your carry capacity. And talk about another really cool balancing thing. Like it's annoying at the start of this game because its resource management is so intense. Like you have like 6 slots, and every item takes a fucking slot, and a lot of things don't stack on top of each other either, so it's like the pyro canister thing, for your flame shot out of your arm or whatever. It's like each one of those are very valuable to have in battle, so you can burn bodies and whatnot or whatever. But if you need to carry 2 of them, to be able to burn a handful of bodies or whatever, and you have your pistol and you have your rounds next to it, that's 4 slots right there. Plus a health item, it's like you have like 1 slot left. It's like shit. Like what do you do? So there's a lot of risk reward type stuff in there too. But walking into that experience, like I knew from the get go, like that pistol was going to be the first thing that I upgraded. So to be able to do that, so pistols and weapons operate off of their upgrades are based off currency, which are these, like items and stuff that you're picking up throughout the world, versus the suit, which is based off cores, and cores come in various ways, like you can, I've seen them, in the world, like after a boss encounter or whatever, like you can find them in the world that way. There's these cats. They're like, I still don't understand the point of the cats.
I still don't know what the cats were all about, but I found them all and I was proud.
Yeah.
And you just stick them in this room. It's like, here you go. Here's your cat room. Here's your cat apartment.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's just, at the end of the game, I had like 10 cats in this apartment just like hanging out. Probably smelled terrible in there. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah. I still don't quite understand the cats, because like they are, through notes and things, and what the we'll explain what the Pathfinder is here in a bit, but or the Warden rather, but I don't know what the cats are, other than they just aren't affected by this disease that's going on, and they're like the only things that have lived this amount of time. It's like weird
and they give really good items, so
exactly.
That was the main reason, because a lot of times, this cat has a core, this cat's got a bunch of ammo with it, nice.
Exactly. So currency for weapons, cores for your armor suit and whatnot. I think it's, again, just balance in general across this game, I think is very well done. I never felt like especially with the suit. It's similar to the weapons and similar with any upgrade in this game. Just like every time I got a new health chunk or was able to carry one more item or be able to carry one more consumable or whatever, you know, like whatever the upgrade was, like it felt so meaningful and big, you know, like I felt like, oh shit, I've got 7 slots now. Like, you know, like I can carry that extra gun. I can carry that extra bit of ammo. I can, you know, like whatever, you know, things like that. Plus, it has a Resident Evil style like valuable system. It's very rudimentary, but like I really enjoyed that portion of it too. You know.
Yeah, because that was the main reason, or the main thing to get a lot of your points was you had to find all the old electronics, and they'd have things from like here's a radio to here's a fan to here's like an old looking a television like console, you know, which I thought was cool. And then there's the military radio, which I think gave you the most amount of points or something like that. It was like 3,500. Like hell yeah, military radio, you know, and old Soviet technology, you know. So you're getting all these cool things. And I will say at least the upside is because, once again, this gameplay is like Resident Evil style, so you got your save rooms and all that kind of stuff with your storage lockers and everything, is even if I did kind of run out of stuff, it's like, whatever, I'll just run back, you know. I mean, I gotta do a little bit of trotting, and you know, I do that. Most likely it's like one of those ones, like it wasn't always the worst thing, because even if I had to go back and drop a couple things off, I'm like, well, I probably need to pick up a new firebomb anyways, because you only get one of those, you know, and you blast through those real quick. And so go back, you reload that and everything there. Might as well save. I'm already back here. Well, exactly. You know, do that. And I will say, this is actually one thing I liked a lot about this game that I almost don't see in almost any other survival horror. But whenever you ran back in this game, there was enemies never reappeared in this game. I think it was so if you cleared out a room, you cleared out a room. You know, I mean, once in a blue moon there might be, because it's triggered by a story scene. Yeah. But there was never that fear of like, oh, I got to run all the way back, and then all of a sudden something else jumps out. That never happened. I mean, I thought of it the whole way through. I'm like, dude, that never does, which I think it's just kind of nice. I mean, I know, like, yeah, that does add a little bit more terror and all that stuff, but it just felt, as a practical sense, there's no problem for me running back. Right. If I'm in an old area, I don't have to really worry or anything like that. Whatever. I'm like, I'm just going to go through here.
Well, and I think part of the way that I played, that I assume you probably did as well, and probably majority of players did, is, you know, slow and steady and whatnot. I really got to study that environment. I really got to study the level design and like, oh, go through this door and open this door to open this, you know, this other thing or whatever. To the point of playthrough 2, like I just know where to go, you know, like I can sprint through these levels like hella quick and whatnot, you know. It's really cool. But yeah, no, I'm with you on that. So.
Well, I was going to say an interesting one that kind of coincides with many issues that you've had in the past, but this one doesn't have a map either, which I think, for the most part, I was thinking about in the beginning. I'm like, there's no map. And maybe the first 40% of the game, I was like, felt like I really needed it. Until they're a little bit about like in the middle of the game, like some of the pathways started opening up, and I was like, you know, a map would have came in handy just here, and I don't think it would have taken away. I know I've read that before, where some people think that a map takes away from the horror of a game. Like somebody said that once about like Resident Evil, like, well, that takes away the horror because you have a map. Like, because you have a map?
Yeah,
like,
no,
what?
No.
You know, there's just a couple of minor places where I feel like a map where I ran one way and went, oh, no, the other hallway, you know, turn around, go back there. And you have a GPS location. You can always press R3 or whatever button it is on your PC version, and it'll pop up. And, you know, kind of like Dead Space. Dead Space always felt like you did the thing. I just felt like you do the thrust, and then all of a sudden it shoots the beam.
A little line comes out.
But he always did like a thrust beforehand. That was like my favorite part. I was like, I don't know why he does this thrust. But I loved it.
I had to go and watch that animation in Dead Space just to see what it looked like or whatever. Because in this game, like you know, the Traveler literally just pulls up her arm or whatever, you know. And I was like, dude, it's the same animation. It's not, you know, because like Isaac like throws his hand out or whatever, you know, and
he does something, but he looks like does the thrust and the beam all shoots out. Like I'm like,
so it's not exactly identical, but conceptually it's more or less the same, you know. It's just, you hit a button and it tells you where to go, you know. So.
Which is nice. I do like having that, because that's always good, especially if you put the game down for like 5 days and you came back to it. Like nothing's worse than coming back to a game being like, well, geez, where'd I leave off at? You know, because I try to always do that thing when I leave off on a game. I always like to leave off like this is the beginning of a chapter, or at least leave off like this door right here is what you need to walk through. So when you turn it back on, you're like, oh, okay, that's just where I need to go. But like, at least it gives you that. But I will say it would have been kind of cool just to have a little bit of a map. Just for there's a handful of sections that where you are kind of somewhat going back and forth and unlocking new routes, and as you go through, boom, one door opens back up into the save room that you were at before. And you're like, oh, okay, and then you go through another one. It's nothing too bad.
So I did send you directly before the episode. I forgot to do it earlier. Apologies about that. But I did send you my folder of screenshots that I sent.
Okay.
And in that, you'll see, because I was taking screenshots, there are maps in the game. You just got to find, like they're in the environment and whatnot, which I thought was super interesting too. But speaking of that, even just flipping through some of these screenshots in front of me right now, like, the level designs, dude, the amount of like just blood on the wall in some random language, or whatever, and like you're like looking at it, and then you aim at it and then it pulls up English subtitles or whatever, and there's just so much of the don't let them merge and don't let them blah blah blah, and like so much like horrific things that you see in the environmental design of this. However, there's one screenshot in there that you'll see. It made me laugh so fucking hard, because every single message in this game that is written on a wall or whatever, it's spray painted or blood splatter, whatever it is, it's like, it's so heavy and dark and whatnot. And then you like end up in this like train station area or whatever. And I see this thing up on the wall and it says something in some other language and it just says sports underneath it. And I was like,
sports.
What? So I click, I aim at it, and it literally just says, do sports. And I was like, what? So
yeah, I remember you sent me that one, because I remember they just popped up in a screenshot. I was laughing at that. I tried to find that one. I couldn't find that one. I was like on my own. Once you saw that, I was like, I know I'm going to run across this. But well, I guess location-wise, I guess just to kind of give context to what this whole world is in 1981 in like Poland or whatever, Soviet-occupied area, the infection and whatnot pretty much just wiped out this whole town and everything like that. So everything in there is pretty much like literally like if you were at Soviet design, where it has that like very like everything's to the point, like that post-war rebuild where it's just like, no, it's got to be the most efficient. It doesn't have to look nice, just needs to work. You know, so everything's got that cool Soviet architecture. I don't know, I'm always partial to that. Like I love Soviet style stories. So that just was already neat in itself. And that's all the technology, and that's the world you're going through. And I think everything must be in Polish then, because at first I was trying to think of what that is. I know it's Soviet, but I know it's not exactly Russian. Because at first I was playing this game because I didn't know who Bloober. I mean, I knew who they were, but I didn't know any of their backstory. Yeah. And I was like, oh, is this one of those ones where is this like one of those Russian games, kind of like Metro or something like that? And then it's like when I looked it up later, I was like, oh no, they're from I believe it's Poland. I'm gonna double check that real quick, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's accurate. but yeah, just everything about this, because like we experience like two different versions of this world too. I mean, like there's the old 1980s like style world design and whatnot, and then there's like this hyper futuristic, and not in terms of like bright neon lights and spaceships and stuff. It's just like it's very post-apocalyptic, but it's in the deep future. And what Spence is talking about with this like disease thing that we start to come across is like the very first time like we start to read about it, we just hear about the change is like the only thing it's really referred to as and whatnot. And you're starting to like read notes about like one of the very first places we go to is this apartment complex, and I'll read what is said right at the very start of the game of like what the traveler is, more or less, or at least like what it says at the start of the game. And it says the work of the travelers is full of challenges, but they were made for them. And while the first few steps in a world long gone may have harsh... Sorry, let me restart that. And while the first few steps in a world long gone may seem harsh and unforgiving, travelers come equipped with specialized tools to ease that burden. Choose the ones that suit you best. Develop your own technique and strategies. In time, you will learn how to overcome the harsh world of New Dawn, such as our calling. And those words, such as our calling, is like brought back over and over and over and over. So like a lot of like what a traveler actually is more or less like a collector. You know, like we're in the future, you know, like deep into the future. We are sent to time portals, essentially, to go back and collect essences, people's souls, more or less, of people from the past or whatever, to bring them back to the future for this mysterious organization thing called the Collective, you know. And that's like really like for the first probably 3/4 of the game, that's all I knew.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but yeah, I mean, like, so there's time paradox stuff going on. There's time travel. There's wormholes. There's like just so much fucking weird shit going on in this game. But I do think that it was pretty well pulled off. I really enjoy the traveler character, especially over time, because at the very start of this game, even throughout the totality of the game, she's very just like monotoned and robotic, you know, in her personality and whatnot. But as the game's progressing and you're starting to, you know, read more notes about the world, you're starting to understand, you know, more and more about what this the change is, you know. Eventually, like we come to that we come across another person called the Warden or whatever, and like that Warden character really threw me for a loop of like who he actually is, because at the start you're just like, you're the only alive thing, you know, around. We don't know if we're a robot or a human or a fucking alien or whatever, you know. We have no idea what we are. But after experiencing a time portal area where we go to this like apartment complex, and like you see it off in the distance, you'll see this in the screenshots too, is just like you see that yellow light off in the distance or whatever, and like the building is just like destroyed around it, and there's a lot of like zero gravity stuff going on and whatnot. And you know, experiencing that first more or less like the first act being in that apartment building, I thought was really neat. Not only because you have this like mysterious like artifact looking thing up top that you're trying to get to, that's your mission objective, but you're also like experiencing, you know, the world design, the environmental storytelling. You're fighting monsters. It's extremely hard. It's oppressive. It's dark. It's, you know, like all these things are like building into like what the remainder of the game is going to be and whatnot. And I thought, again, I just thought it was like so well done. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with like story stuff, because there's a lot to talk about there, but.
Yeah, well, it's one of those ones when I was playing this game too, because, you know, your main character lady, I was trying to figure out for a while, I'm like, what exactly, you know, am I? Because all you see her in is in this space, you know, suit kind of thing that's fully closed, you know, and that's it. You never see her face, never see anything like that, you know. So I was thinking like, okay, and she does kind of talk monotone and everything like that. I'm like, so at first I was going, okay, kind of robotic and so on, but then you meet some characters along the way that keep talking about you coming from above. So I kind of was going like, well, wait a second, are these like aliens that are out here and so on like that? Because when they kept meet you, like, oh, you came down, you know, and stuff like that. It's like, well, that's kind of an interesting sort of concept and so on, you know. And even when you do, because when you're going back in time, for the most part, everything's just like destroyed. It almost kind of looks like, you know, it got literally carpet bombed to death. And then, of course, you run across the mutoid orphan creatures, so they're called, you know, that are out there spreading the disease. And a lot of those notes actually read very like COVID-like. Like, the government told us to take this vaccine, and goddamn it, now we're mutating and forming into each other. I knew it, you know. And I was working at the factory, and they told me it was going to be a great job. And now the factory's all the... Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. You're like, well, yeah, well, I see where that was inspired from.
Yeah.
You know,
it was funny. And, it was developed during that time period. So,
yeah, you know? So you could totally see, and I feel like probably if you're in Europe and so on like that, it probably was a lot more worse than over here at even the U.S. But So yeah, you see that in there. But I remember like the first time you run across an actual human, you're like, what the hell is it? Like throws you for a loop. Like this whole world's just been me in the spacesuit and these like, you know, mutation like creatures walking around and so on like that. And then all of a sudden here's a human in regular 1981 attire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love the especially going through that time portal thing like from the get-go, because like I've got screenshots leading up to that point and then directly afterwards and whatnot. And like in the apartment complex, like I'm looking at them right now, like in the apartment complex, it's just like I said, it's broken. It's like there's a lot of zero gravity stuff going on. Like there's all kinds of like weird stuff. But when you enter in through the time portal and you end up in an apartment complex, and it's very obvious that it's like, you know, you're in the past, you know, because like everything's like still kind of like grungy and like dark and like, you know, like foggy and whatnot, but nothing's like busted and broken and like, you know, like things like that. Like the very first, like I'm looking at a screenshot of just like, there's like a couch, there's like some posters on the wall, there's a couple deer heads up on the wall, and it just looks like a pretty normal like apartment building, you know, or whatever, you know. And then you exit out, and then you start to experience, you know, like the actual like what is actually happening like in that time era and whatnot. And this is like very much directly after the change like started actually happening and like mutating people and whatnot. So I thought it was pretty cool. So
well, you know, the environment's actually kind of a similar to look and design to Resident Evil Revelations 2 as well. Mm-hmm. You know, because that one you're on a Soviet island and everything like that, so it has that rustic kind of almost prison-y look to it and so on, and simplified. And even in that game, they have the mutants are a little bit more like, you know, transformative and so on. Mm-hmm. So it does have a little bit of that there. It's funny. I have a note right here that says that like I wrote this halfway in because I'm like I wanted to write it exactly how I felt like at this moment. And about halfway in the game, I'm starting to feel that my lady is an alien and that this might be part of an invasion and an infection going on here. Because I was like, just by what I was getting at about halfway through, I was like, that was my state at this moment. Like, is that what's going on? Is that the aliens cause this infection and so on like that? And that's why they're wearing the spacesuits? You know, well, turns out it's something different than that once you get farther on. But that's the thing is like, you kind of made you...
There's so many notes and things and like in characters that we come across, you know, in the past and whatnot that talk about like your kind came, you brought this upon us, but you know, so like the game totally spun that in my head too, and that's what I was saying. Like even 3/4 of the way through this game, I'm still like I don't know, you know, like I really don't know. I like you were saying about that whole. Just like the way the characters like start to portray themselves and whatnot, you know, I thought was super interesting. I'm looking at the screenshot of in the apartment when you come across the woman that wants you to find her daughter or something like that, but she won't fully open the door, you know, and she's talking about
she's got that really demonic door.
That creeped me out, like sincerely, like because I had no idea, you know, because this is still so early on in the game, like I had no idea what to really anticipate here or whatever. But what's really interesting is if you listen to her words at that time versus what you know way later on and whatnot, because she's blind, she can't like, you know, she can't hardly like move and whatnot. You don't really know at that exact moment, but like she's experiencing the change. Like that's part of, you know, that you find in medical notes and whatnot. Like blindness is like one of the very first things that happens. Yep. You know. And just the progressions through, you know, like each stage of like the change to actually becoming fully formed and whatnot, and all the notes surrounding it, the medical things around that. It's just it's so good. It's just creepy.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Well, even just speaking of some of the monsters and so on like that, I mean, I will even say that like one thing it is kind of nice gameplay wise is you can kind of outrun everything pretty well easily too, you know, just in case, because there was a couple moments where like you know you have 6 enemies trailing you. I was like, I'm just gonna book it and see what happens, and lo and behold, a lot of times you could get away and be like, oh, okay, totally fine. Also, I noticed like just dodge, even though your character doesn't move really fast, like a lot of times just sidestepping, it's amazing. I could out dodge a lot of like attacks coming at me just by slowly sidestepping out of the way. And here we go. This is one part that was kind of funny though, is there was one point where it was about maybe midway in the game, somewhere during the factory section. there was a couple enemies that were chasing me towards. So I think there was one coming at me, and I was just doing the thing where I'd run inside the save room. I would grab a firebomb, go out, throw it at him, run back in. I was just like, oh, this will save some ammo. And it's funny because I noticed that like they wouldn't come in the save room. They wouldn't come in the save room whatsoever. It's like, and then at one point, one of them came in the save room, and it's almost like it did this thing like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. And the door shut up behind it. And then, like, it started, because if it gets to the save room, they'll slowly start backing out. Like, it's almost like, whoa, I'm breaking the game code. Like, I don't have authorization. I know I'm a scary looking monster, but I follow by the rules, damn it. And then the door slid up, and then all it was doing the slow backup. And I just went up and just started punching it, and it couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I thought that was just kind of cool. It's like, oh, dude, that was not supposed to happen. I trapped him in the save room.
Yep. There's a handful of that in this game that I started to recognize, and like, I mean, you know me at this point, I like to kind of break everything down to wireframe and like, what is triggering this? How does this work? Like blah blah blah. There's a section. God, it's a bit early on. I'll never be able to describe it properly for you to be able to figure out where I'm at, but. There's a room, and it has a handful of just level 1 style, just typical fodder enemies, whatever. There's a big fat dude in there, that's a bit more of a pain in the ass to take on or whatever. So I'm just doing my methodical thing. I dip into this room, I kind of peek a corner a little bit, and I'm like kind of jiggle peeking around this corner, and like identifying all the enemies in the room. So that was one other piece I wanted to mention real quick. So the guns have like attachments that you can find in the environment and whatnot. The moment that you get the one that kind of shows you like the rough idea of like what the enemy's health is as you're aiming at it, with like, so it's like this little attachment that goes on the side of your gun. It shows you like if you aim at an enemy, typically without firing at it whatsoever, is experiencing any damage, it's green. You start to fire at it a little bit, it turns orange, and then it turns red, and then it dies, and it kind of gives you like an indication. So in this room, I was using that feature methodically constantly throughout the game of just like poking my head into a doorway, going like, okay, there's a dead body there. Aim, no pulse. No. Yep, that one's green. Oh, yep, that one's green. Okay, these two are gonna get up.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think that was its more important feature was that it's like it sells it to you like it's like, oh, you could check their health, but really what I think it's for, it's like no, because when you see dead bodies on the ground, like it never tells you yay or nay if they're kind of alive. Now, granted, anybody on the ground can turn into an absorption thing, so that's always something to keep in mind. But the fact that you could use that gun to be like, there they are, or there they are, or it worked really good against. We haven't even talked about these enemies, and that's almost another can of worms. But the wall corpses, you could, because you'd get these weird creatures that are just stuck to a wall, you just making these sounds. But a lot of times you just slowly have to look and so on. But then you get like just a little crack, and you're like, perfect, green. That means I can fire. It always told me I could fire. Though I will say, once in a blue moon, though, like I think because it's an over the shoulder one, is sometimes you think you're looking at it right, and it will get clipped on a corner, and I it's one of those ones. If it was in first person, it'd be interesting to know if like, am I actually shooting that corner, or is it just like one of those ones like the barrier, the wireframe of it's just extending farther than it should be. Yep.
So in that room, kill the first couple fodder enemies, whatever. I start to enter. I didn't recognize that there was a big boy in the back side of the room or whatever. So I enter into the room. Big boy gets up, and I'm like, oh shit, because like at this exact moment, I have 2 pistol rounds. My shotgun's completely out of ammo. I don't have any healing items, nothing, and like big boys are kind of, they're kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. You really got to put some damage down to take them out. They're easily manageable as long as you have space. And this room had space, so I was like, cool, So I'm starting to start to fight it or whatever. I pop off my 2 shots and charge shots to its head or whatever, and I'm like aiming at it, and it's still orange health, and I'm like, fuck, I'm like, okay. So I'm doing the dance, it's throwing its big old arms around and stuff, trying to smash me, and I'm doing the dance. I'm just smacking it over and over, take a few steps back, aim at it, still orange. Okay, run back, smack back. And eventually it just got to the point where I was just like, dude, I'm not gonna kill this thing. Like, it's just, it's gonna take forever to kill this thing. I have to go back and find ammo, forgetting about the fact that they can morph and change. So the fucking 2 bodies. So I
absorbed all of them.
And it absorbs them, and I come back, and it's like, now it's a level 3 big boy, and it has full health again, and it's green, and I'm like, well, fuck, now I got 3 shotgun rounds and 2 pistol ammo. So like, okay,
now the thing's probably spewing out the green stuff too, because I think those big boys, once they absorb a ball, then they fire.
Get the poison abilities, dude. It's annoying. But your comment about the enemies not being able to enter the safe room. This particular mob couldn't exit that door, even though it's the rest of the level. It's not a safe room or anything. It just could not exit that door. So I got to play cheese mode with it, you know, and like I expended all my ammo after it turned level 3, got it back down to orange health again. And I was like, well, fuck, I got to run back and, you know, explore the level again and see what I can find. Thank God there's persistence and they don't just regen, you know, or whatever. Because I probably dipped back 3 or 4 times just to go scrounge up anything I could just to get a little more damage output, come back to finally kill it or whatever. So like that was a fucking pain. But there is a lot of cheese stuff you can do in this game, you know, regarding that, just based off enemies and their boundaries, you know, and their leashes especially too. Those doors that you're talking about. So typically a lot of the doors in this game, if they're not just a traditional wooden door that you open or whatever, they're like these big metal sliding up and down doors or whatever, you know, and they take a second or two to like open or close. So in that section, I'm fighting that dude and I leave, you know, to go get some ammo and whatnot. And I find a door that I hadn't entered, you know, it has a couple boards on it. I break it, you know, and sometimes like in these side room areas or whatever, sometimes it's just straight up items. You can just go in there and just grab items and leave, you know, sometimes there's an encounter, blah, blah, blah. So I go in there and I pick up all the shit and it happened to be an encounter room, you know, so just one mob shits out, you know, from the side of the wall. And I'm like, okay, you know, and again, you know, because I'm trying to save my ammo for the big boy in the other room, you know, it's like I don't want to waste it on this guy. So I leave, you know, and I start running away. Well, this guy's got a fucking leash, a long leash, you know, and like I run back towards the safe room and you have to go up this staircase or whatever, you know, and I'm like waiting and I'm like looking at it. I'm standing by the door of the safe room, but it hadn't opened yet, you know, and I'm just like aiming down the staircase and it starts coming up the staircase. I'm like, oh shit, you know, okay, it can actually come up here. So I run to the door. This was probably like the most panicked I've been in the entire experience, is because like I'm on my last health chunk. I hadn't saved at that point. I just got my ammo to go deal with Big Boy in the other room so I can move on, you know, or whatever. And this thing's chasing me down. I run over to the door and it starts going chunk, 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 chunk down. And I'm looking to the right and this thing's coming at me like hella fast, you know, throwing its arms. I'm just like, no, please. You know, didn't want to have to revert fucking 20 minutes, you know, and like refight that thing all over again. So, I mean, like scariness, I think the intro, its first hour, totally has it. I think once you experience your first handful sets of mobs, because there really isn't too much mob variety in this game. Like there's maybe 6 enemy types and then evolutions on top of them, you know.
Yeah, I'd probably say something like that, you know. So I never like felt scared, and I think that was one comment that I made at you at one point, and I think it's just like inevitable. I think this happens with any one game. I told you from the get-go of me with horror, the number one horror thing that scares the piss out of me is Japanese horror. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was, well, I have a semblance. I think it's probably partial. It's partial Fatal Frame 2. Easily one of the scariest games I had ever played. Granted, I was like 12 years old, you know, playing late at night on the weekends in a barn. Versus like, I love the barn part.
Oh yeah. Well, it was my
in a barn just to top off the scariness of it all.
Well, exactly, you know. So that always scared me, and then the other game that scared the shit out of me when I was younger was straight up Dead Space. Like Dead Space literally took me almost a year to play through because I was terrified to play it, you know, like physically play it. I haven't felt like that in forever, and I don't really know what it is. Like I said, there's panic horror, like that moment of, you know, dude chasing me. I'm on my last chunk. Like, fuck, no, please, you know, like I don't want to die.
Technically, that same thing, that same horror though, like that comes in, you know, Call of Duty. Realistically, if you need to get behind a wall to heal,
well, exactly.
You know what I mean? That's what I mean. It's like that can happen in any video game where it's like, oh shit.
Well, that's why I'm praying. I'm praying that Silent Hill F actually gives me the heebie-jeebies. You know, like.
Well, that because I'll say this because like myself, it's like. I think because I've spent so much of my life like with horror movies and horror games and all that stuff, like, yeah, I'll get like jump scared if something comes out at me. Like, that's the inevitable. Once again, that can literally happen in, literally Gears of War or something like that, or any of those kind of games, straight up regular scared though, like, because it's weird because like, even in like Silent Hill, like I know like I always looked at Silent Hill and I go, I actually find it way less scary than Resident Evil. And my theory always was on that one was because Resident Evil, especially the original couple, feels almost more realistic, like in a sense, like, yeah, they are a little bit over the top, but it feels like that stuff can almost kind of happen. Yeah. Where like in Silent Hill, I'm like, it's totally just mythology type stuff. Yeah. Like, so it's just like, it doesn't feel nearly as scary. And then the other thing that I remember I came to conclusion, I think I was doing a Silent Hill marathon, like 6 or 7 years plus ago again, and I was like, not a whole lot of things grab you in Silent Hill, where like everything grabs you in Resident Evil. And I think that makes it a lot more scary because, things are going to grab you and so on. Where Silent Hill, they mostly just like swing at you and you're like, well, whatever, I'll just keep walking. Yeah. Like, what are you going to do? Unless it's like those monkey things that are in Silent Hill 1, like, that will get you where it's just, and it jumps on you and they just like pound you to death or whatever. Oh yeah. But, so for the most part, like I don't know, like a lot of times like weird, bizarre, like things that are kind of very like unnatural and so on like that, oddly don't scare me as much as something that would seem more real. Like once again, Tomb Raider gets me more than anything else, especially those original ones where like the gorillas and the cheetahs and all that kind of stuff come jumping at you and the bears. Like I think because that's very real. Like if I go outside, that might actually happen. Where realistically, as much as I love I love Silent Hill. Don't get me wrong, but I know I'm going to go outside. That's not going to happen. Whatever. Right. I'm not going to be in some hell world looking down through like the grates and everything.
Fucking pyramid head chasing after you.
Yeah, exactly. So I could watch that just like, that's just a cool design. That's how I look at it there, And it's funny. I want to say this because you brought up Dead Space, because I always think this is hilarious because I remember I was a little bit late to the party of Dead Space. I think I started playing Dead Space 2 might have just came out, but like my first experience of Dead Space was like I got the Wii version because I was looking for more games that were like the on-rail shooters. I was like, oh, there's a Dead Space one, I'll try that out. So I got through that, played through it, and I was like, this is great, but it showed all the monster designs and everything like that. So when I went to play Dead Space 1, it's like I felt like I was already like, well, I already know what all these creatures look like now. It's like, they're not shocking like if it was like the first time you see it or something like that, because I was kind of shown it all from early on.
Yeah. And I'd like to see, like, God knows, I mean, like, likely a title exists out there that would just scare the living piss out of me, like, absolutely. But at the same time, like, I don't know, like, at this point in my life, like, I want that feeling again, but I just haven't experienced it, in like forever, honestly, like, I'll tell you, like, little side offshoot of like me and horror. So you remember that stupid movie from like 2006 called Darkness Falls? Yeah. Okay. So that movie is about the fucking tooth fairy that comes and kills your ass if you look at her face, I watched that, dude, when so I was with my grandfather, and this was probably this was a bit earlier than that. I think this is like 2002 maybe. But anyways, I'm with my grandfather. We're in his camper. We're staying at a KOA campsite out on the coast, Mendocino coastline. And that movie takes place in deep redwoods. We were camping in deep redwoods.
Perfect.
And I'll never forget, like, if you've ever been to a KOA or whatever, it's just like you pick your campsite or whatever, you set up. There's usually like a little kiosk that has like a little mini store, or maybe like, book rental or, movie rental, VHS, whatever. So my grandpa sends me over there and he's just like, yeah, pick out a movie for tonight. I saw Darkness Falls. It's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So we sit down and we watch it on a little 13-inch little CRT TV in the camper or whatever. He slept in the camper. My tent was outside. Bro, I had to... So I finished watching that movie. I go outside and it's just woods, darkness, and just all you hear is just crickets, and shit like that. And I'll never forget, like, going to sleep and then waking up, like, and it was probably like 2 a.m., something like that. And I had to pee so bad. And the bathroom, dude, is like a quarter mile away. And you just see the light, like you see the light of the bathroom up in the distance, but I got to walk through the woods to get there. Scared the living shit out of me. So like what I'm getting at is, like, I'm curious if experiences like that when I was younger, because Darkness Falls literally had me keep my lights on, because that was a big portion of that movie, you know, is like she couldn't be in the light, you know, or whatever. Like I kept my lights on for probably a good 6 months, like sleeping wise afterwards. Like it genuinely terrified me. Even earlier in life, I think the genuine reason why I hate snakes, like in general, is because of the movie Anaconda. Like I watched that movie when I was like 8 years old and like had nightmares about snakes.
I killed Danny Trejo.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, little offshoot, but I think to round it back over to Kronos, like there's tension and there's good amount of like panic horror in this game, but like I wouldn't call it scary per se. And I think a lot of it centers around its action combat, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it's like I always have, because I feel like I've just gotten so used to horror. Like I always have a hard time trying to, because I can literally like my whole life of like I can literally play a horror game right before I go to bed, and, you know, turn it off and go to sleep and have no problem whatsoever. I've done that so many times that like it doesn't even faze me one bit. That you know, where I know some people that like they're like, dude, I can't do that. I'll have to play them during the daytime. It's not it's not necessarily like they get scared in the moment. Like I think psychologically it messes with them later on. And for me, it's like, I don't know, I can watch Silent Hill and be like, oh, this is great, and then go to sleep and like no problems whatsoever. So I always feel like I don't, like when I think of like what is scary in a game, you know, I kind of just more like picture myself like if you were in this world. That's the best way to sort of like look at it. And that's more like, okay, if I was in this world, that's actually, you know, it's different than when you're an observer. When you're an observer, it's like you're literally sitting behind the glass of the television set watching onwards and so on. You could turn it off whenever you want, but like I always try to picture myself in this world here, you know, where you have this plague-driven, you know, crisis that has like literally ravished this entire town, and none of these people are left alive, and you find these notes of people thinking that they're going to make it, like, oh, little Billy or whatever, little Soviet Billy here is just like, oh, he's just excited because he doesn't have to go to school tomorrow, you know, because they shut it down. He doesn't wonder. He's questioning why his dad has such a bad cough.
Yeah, exactly. Dad's eyesight's going bad.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you're finding just these notes and stuff and going in this world here and so on. And, you know, just tried to figure it out. But I do think that, like, that's kind of what it is. Though I will say some of the monsters that, like, are quite interesting. Once again, I'll go back to the wall corpses or whatever, because those ones there, because even if you're having on the headphones on, like, you still can't exactly pinpoint to where they are. You know, it's one of those. Well, maybe if you had a real good like surround sound, maybe that would do it. Yeah. You know, but
like that monster type to me, it's funny in the game design. So again, breaking down the wireframe real quick. Every single one of them that I encountered has a hole that you can view from some angle, you know, or whatever, like you had mentioned, you know, to take it out. I think the only real way these monsters will get you, and I got grabbed like twice, I think, and it's just because I wasn't paying attention enough, you know, to them. Is again your expediency. I think if you're trying to sprint through this game, you're gonna get grabbed by those fucking things all the time, and you're gonna lose a shitload of health doing it. You know, they're super easy to kill. They're like basically one charge shot, you know, and it takes them out. But
and I will say later in the game though, they do almost like no damage to you, because like I remember I got grabbed by one like kind of towards the end. I don't think it even changed my health. No, really. I mean, granted, my suit was probably, you know, 6 points upgraded or something like that. But like towards the end, I was like, oh, okay, that didn't do anything. You know, there's a couple of them too where like, you know, you don't hear them and they're almost like the silent ones. And then you like pick an item up or you flip a switch or something like that. And then like it'll be like right behind you, which you could get it if you're searching around with your green laser. But one of those ones got me once where it's like, oh, damn it. Yeah, I think again, you know, it's just slow and methodical, you know, is absolutely the way to play. And you know, I was kind of anticipating a bit more, just based off of the original trailer from a couple of years ago and then its launch trailer. I was more anticipating more of a Dead Space style where it's like all about dismemberment and whatnot, you know, like shoot off their arm, shoot off their leg, shoot off their head, you know, like whatever. That game really isn't about that. I mean, like there's gore and there's dismemberment in the game, but it's not like a core feature like Dead Space was, you know. Well, Dead Space was all about slicing body parts apart and so on like that. And that you get the gun where it shoots the beam and you can choose which direction you want to go. And so
Yep. Yep.
Because I think one of the cool things about Dead Space, I know it's just jumping off top there, but I loved how like all the guns were like pretty much based off of like, you know, blue collar space construction workers.
Yeah, it's all mining stuff.
Yeah, I think that was like the coolest thing. It was just like, yeah, it's like you're actually, it's almost like equivalent of like you did in the modern day. It's like, oh, well, what are your guns? Well, you have like a nail gun, you know, you got like, yeah, you got like a skill saw and all that kind of stuff. And I think that was just kind of like the cool thing about it, you know. Where in here, and I guess it's like, okay, beyond you got your regular orphans that evolve and so on like that. Then there's the spitter orphans. You of course got the wall corpses. You got the little bastards like the crawl on the ground and blow up the little cyst like looking thingies.
Yeah, little acid demons.
Yeah, which once again, those ones mostly, as long as you don't get too caught on those ones, they're not too bad, you know. And then you got, there's like the spider ones that crawl on the walls and so on like that. And other than the fact that sometimes those ones take more bullets than you think they should. Like a couple times where it's like, dude, is that thing still alive? Like, jeez.
Yeah. See, by the time I was encountering them, they were so I'm gonna refer to everything like in terms of its shot count. I'm talking pistol charge shots, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
Those enemies comparatively, like really were like four charge shots usually. At least at the time of first encountering them, you know.
No, that sounds about right, but I feel like, I don't know why, they felt like they were going to go down like a lot easier than that, like a 2 or 3 shotters, you know.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what other, because there's really not much more like enemy type. Like there's boss designs beyond that, you know, and I think the boss designs are pretty cool. But
yeah, the boss ones are pretty neat. You did mention that they do kind of repeat, and they do in a sense but once again, I guess like in similar fashion, they just evolve, because that's kind of like what happens is you get a boss, and then you get a different boss, and then the third boss you get is literally like the combination of the first two together now. So like it's got the powers of one and powers of the other. And for the most boss, the boss battles are pretty intense, but mostly it's just run around, find all the things that will blow up in its face, shoot those, go over there, and then and sometimes even just I literally beat a couple bosses just by punching them, because one, I just either ran out of ammo, or sometimes it was just the upside to the punch though is it would go through everything. So it's almost like you didn't have to have the aim totally perfect. It was like it would hit the entire like targets, you know, or like wherever it was. So sometimes you throw a flame down, just start punching it to death right there. It was almost sometimes a better tactic than trying to find its weak point.
I really so like the very first boss that we come across, I consider a boss anyways, is the one in the apartment. You know, like when you get locked into that room in the apartment, and there's basically there's like 4 major rooms in this apartment complex or whatever, with this wall running in between it. This monster type I thought was super interesting because, like, first of all, it's very, how to describe it? It reminds me of like Venom, you know, or something, you know, just like this very like black tendrily looking thing, you know, and like
it looks like the symbiote design where it like formed.
You know, so like fighting it's very much about light it on fire, expose its weak points, you know, and like there's something about just like orange pustules, you know, on mobs. I'm just like, it's Resident Evil. It's Resident Evil.
Like, look just like Resident Evil 5.
You know? But I thought that was a super fun encounter, just because of the condensity of the arena that you're in, and then having to like even like midway through that fight or whatever, as you're working your way around the apartment build rooms itself, like even having just like the boards just on that one door or whatever, you know, because you round that corner and you're just like, and it's like right behind you, and you come across like these boards, you're like, fuck, I gotta swing real quick to break the board so I can go into the next room, you know. Again, not scary but panicky, you know, like very panicky, and I enjoyed that about majority of the boss fights. Yeah,
it's still a form of scariness and so on, but at least it does give you, because the nice thing, at least once again in this game, it saves right before all these ones. So I feel like it never like burdens you too much, you know, where I think some games are just almost too full themselves, be like, hey, you died, guess what, go back 30 minutes, you know. And then it's almost like, sometimes nowadays too, you're like, well, maybe I don't want to play your game then.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's better games out there than yours if you're going to make me have to go back that far, you know? But this one's just like, retry the boss again. It's cool. Because there was even one time, I think it was like boss 4 or something like that. I got the achievement, but I actually blew myself up accidentally. Like, because I shot the barrel a little too close and it killed me and it killed the boss. And I saw the achievement pop up and so on. Which I gotta say this about the achievements, dude. The achievement rating was, I mean, great, we are playing this in the very beginning, but they were real low percentages. Like, so it kind of made me wonder. I mean, like, they'd be just regular stuff, like you beat the boss in like Act 4 or whatever. Like, 2.3% of people have this achievement.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's what was interesting is like getting to be able to play so close to launch. One, again, thank God the game just worked out the get-go, so like thank God for that. But two, exactly what you're saying. I mean, like even right now, so there's multiple endings that we'll get to in a little bit, but my ending specifically is as of today 15.8%, which not a lot of people are finishing this, and I wouldn't really anticipate those numbers to start increasing until probably its first like major sale, so give it about 6 months, and then those numbers will start to creep. But I mean, just like even set 5 enemies on fire at the same time, 20%, like it's like, what, like those are common, like.
Well, even as you said, like those numbers increasing with the sale. Well, I hate to sort of say, I feel like the people that all have it right now, you were assuming that are more the hardcore people that like are going to play it. The sale people, I kind of get if they just kind of try it out and go, I paid $20 for it. It wasn't really for me. You know what I mean? Like there's those kind of ones there where I feel like if you paid $60 for the game or whatever the heck it was, $70, I can't remember. That's everything's so expensive now, but not bad expensive. It's technically cheaper than it's ever been. I got to keep saying that because in 1995, a Super Nintendo game was $75 and people only made $5 an hour. So games are extremely cheap, but I mean, price wise, it just, it's there, not complaining, but, like the fact that like you would assume that everybody that kind of got it day one, I'm assuming is putting, a little bit more time into it than you would, than a casual player who just picked it up on a sale or whatnot. It just kind of surprised me. I never saw a whole lot of achievements that said that a lot of people got them, know?
Well, so there's one other thing that happened at this game's launch. Hollow Knight Silk Song came out the same week. That's probably why, if I were to guess.
Oh yeah,
Silk Song has been it's basically the Half-Life 3 of indie games right now. Like it was so insanely hyped up because everybody loves Hollow Knight. Like I personally like Hollow Knight's okay. It's not my favorite thing in the world or whatever.
I think I played I want to say Josh brought it over or whatever when it kind of came out, and he wanted me to get past a part or something on there, or at least give it a go or something like that. And I was like, it's cool. I hate to sort of say it, like I've gotten to this point where like when I see like Metroidvania style stuff, I kind of go,
been there, done it.
Cool for you, but like realistically, if you're not Metroid or Castlevania or one of the few like Shantae or something like that, like I almost kind of don't care anymore. It's like one of those ones like that. Sometimes there's a point where it's like, oh, cool, people are making this kind of stuff, and then there comes a point where it's like, if I'm gonna play it, I'm gonna go with like the I not saying anything against those games, but like there's other ones I think I'm gonna choose from the classics first and foremost, or certain ones, the people that are like, once again, Shantae I feel has like been around long enough that like that kind of fits into that same time period.
No, totally. Forgot where I was going with that.
But that game did come out the same day, even though I feel like that game's completely different. I feel like that the people that are going to grab Kronos and the people that are going to grab that one are probably not the exact same audience.
I'd be curious to see like what concurrent player counts were at the same time between both titles or whatever. But anyways, point being, Silksong is huge, and I think that this game's going to experience probably lesser sales and things because of that, in its launch week or whatever. Which again, I think most people are looking at Bloober based off their previous work. I think that they probably, I still haven't completed it myself, but the amount of Silent Hill 2 remake that I have played is like perfect. You guys nailed it. Great. So I think that this is people are probably just being very wary about Bloober in general, based off their traditional first part, like their own IPs, things like the medium, things like, like we were talking about Layers of Fear and whatnot. They're okay games, but they're not like phenomenal, So I think that a majority of the player base is going to be looking at this title, knowing who Bloober is, going, okay, this is going to be a AA experience, So they're probably not like jumping out of their seat to go grab the thing and play it, or whatever. I think that I'm not going to speak for you. I believe we're on the same path here. I'm going to say to our audience, like 100%, like go buy this. Like this game, it's so good,
Yeah. No. I full on really did enjoy the whole experience on it and so on like that. I think it's one of those ones like it's probably one of the best survival horrors I played in a good while for just right out of the gate. I'm trying to think of something that's not Resident Evil or something like that, like in the last handful of years, that you kind of go, oh yeah. No, it's 100%. I feel like that's the thing is it kind of looks somewhat indie, and I'm not saying that it plays like it literally, like if you told me this was brought to you by EA, you wouldn't think anything of it. You'd be like, oh, okay, wow, it's just EA got a game really dialed in. That would be the only thing I was thinking of, like, wow, no extra updates and so on like that necessary, huh? But like, no, it looks AAA as all it can be and so on like that. But it is horror, so it's very niche, You mentioned that with that, the other one coming out. See, it's not as bad as like, this is one that I always think about, like when you like release a game at the wrong time period is, I remember when Mad Max came out. It came out the same day as Metal Gear Solid 5. And of course I bought both of them that day, but like, I'm like, dude, that is not what you want to come out against.
Oh yeah.
No. And those ones they're both action games. So they're kind of in the same category. They're probably the same target audience.
And guess who has never played Mad Max to this day because of that?
Yeah, I hate to say it. I felt bad. I didn't finish Mad Max because I kind of went back, forth, Metal Gear Solid.
Yep.
And the same thing's happened to me on other games before too. I can't remember. There was another one that one time came out right alongside Legend of Zelda. Good luck.
Oh yeah.
I actually think it's Mass Effect. I think it was Mass. Oh well. That did too. That did. I just never got that at the time, but I think it was Mass Effect Andromeda. Yeah. I think literally Skyward Sword came out. Or not Skyward Sword. Breath of the Wild came out.
Yeah.
There you go. That whole month was gone to something else. But
exactly.
So that is kind of bad. I don't think that. I think with Cronos, it's just like it's going to appeal to that horror audience no matter what. It's a niche game no matter what. Because we all know that generally horror's not for everybody anyways. It's like in a sense it's probably the biggest niche kind of audience experience it is, but at the same time it's still a niche audience.
See, and I almost wanted to, so when I was first describing this game to a handful of my friends based off my first 3 hours of experience in the game, I was throwing a hardcore tag on it because it felt hardcore, at the start of that game in terms of like, it's just unforgiving, like, and again, I think that boils back down to what we were talking about with difficulty and whatnot. But slowly but surely, like as the game progresses, you're upgrading, you're getting all your shit and all that, like it's just getting easier and easier. I don't think I died from a traditional enemy outside of a boss from probably the end of the Steelworks onwards. I think, like I defeated the Steelworks boss first try, barely, like skin of my teeth again, like one of those fights. And then I think the next boss encounter from there was like the next death. And then pretty much that's like the halfway point of the game or whatever. I really don't think I died to a traditional enemy, like beyond Steelworks, to the end of the game. So it does get easier. But again, like, I think that, if you wanted to have that hardcore tag on it, I think it's appropriate, but for its first half, like essentially.
Yeah, well, it's almost like you just work up the skill and everything like that, mixed with you do just start getting more ammo and more guns and more power ups and yada yada yada.
Yep.
And then it's kind of like, because I was the same way too. I felt probably Steelworks. Let's say that's the middle of the game, give or take. From that point on, it was. I think only the bosses might have been, and a couple of the bosses. And a lot of times it wasn't that big of a deal. I was like, okay, I needed to kind of restart that one anyways, because now I know exactly what I need to do tactic-wise.
I missed 2 shots, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. I blew myself up on the barrel. I stood too close to it. And then it wasn't too bad. And even if you did get damaged, you're like, yeah, whatever. I have to craft stuff anyways because I keep picking up. Because that was the thing, is a lot of times like you'd pick up more craft stuff than you had. It's like, well, I guess I got to create some shotgun ammo. Oh boy, got to create some shotgun ammo now. I just had,
Yep.
So I mean, and even at the end of the game, I kind of like because a lot of times this is the problem I always have in a lot of survival horror games, is I'll hold on to stuff for the dear life the whole time, and then you get to the end of the game, you're like, you should have used that shotgun ammo and all this stuff you built up. Like, what were you doing using the pistol 75% of the game? Like, still using that ammo. Like, you were savoring it. Because that always happened to me in Resident Evil. I'd get to the end of the game and I feel so like, I have so much extra stuff and I should have just been like using that instead. Yeah. And now it's like I got like 70 shots in the shotgun. I'm like, why do I have 70 shots in the shotgun like in the laboratory section?
Right. Never need it.
No, where like in this one here, it's like, I probably had some extra stuff. And once you kind of get to like I will say the last couple boss battles are kind of interesting, because you get the Eliza one, which, as you progress through this game, you go through everything from like the apartments to the steelworks, and you start working your way to like the hospital. And it has a lot of like Silent Hill kind of like blue collar vibe type stuff. And then you eventually, just like Silent Hill, you kind of get to like, here's the church area and so on like that now. And we were kind of seeing here. And then you get this kind of Eliza lady that you battle, who has probably the most unique boss battle of them all.
Oh yeah.
Where she's got this
about Resident Evil.
Very Resident Evil. You're shooting big old orbs that she has popping up and so on. That boss battle was actually a little bit tricky. I almost want to say that one took me about 3 tries to get it kind of right, because you got to shoot these orbs, and of course the whole time she's spewing, green goo on you that's all acidy and so on. And then there's little bastards walking towards you that you got to make sure you take care of. And at some point, it's like you turn around, and you're like, dude, there's like 15 of those guys running at me. Like, let me blow up a barrel really quickly and so on like that.
Yeah.
And that one, was kind of an interesting battle because you had to kind of go back, forth, turn around, shoot the ones behind you, and then there's a lake of acid appears up, and you got to start blasting her, keep the little guys off you from the below, and so on. I thought that was kind of a unique challenge. Like it was like,
it's easily the most memorable fight. I took a handful of screenshots of like the cutscenes that were playing around that section and whatnot, and just Eliza's design is just so sick, dude. It's just this culmination of just like all these like body parts and whatnot, but it's mainly like arms and hands and shit, and it's just this really large tower. The way that you walk into the church, you're like walking into this like large open door cathedral, and like it's just in the distance, like with all the candles and all the shit, like that you would imagine would be in a cathedral. Beautiful, dude. Like such a cool design, such a cool fight. It did take me a couple tries to get through it. Really, a lot of it was so after you kill the first initial amount of little pustules around it or whatever, the ones spawn behind you and above you and whatnot, like in the middle of the room. I didn't recognize that. So I was just fighting the small mobs that it was tossing at me over and over. And eventually I ran out of ammo and I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to? And I finally like saw one on the ceiling. I was like, oh, okay.
Yep. I did that exact same thing. So it was like one of those ones like, oh, turn around. Okay. Why would I have thought that?
Yeah.
One of those things. So that one is a little bit kind of tricky, but, beyond that and so on there, it still was kind of just very interesting, very kind of like intense. Like, even though like you had as much power up and so on like that, that was where like because you get this machine gun in the game, and that kind of came in handy there a little bit, because the charge shot on that thing, it would fire off like 3 rounds, but pretty much one charge shot would go pop, 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 blow up the thing, pop, 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 blow up the thing, and because I was also building up all this machine gun ammo too. So it's like, at first I was like, am I going to use the machine gun? I'm like, well, you got ammo for it, might as well.
Yeah. So funny. I text you like towards the end of my experience or whatever. So like I was getting because again, I put all my focus into my pistol. I literally didn't upgrade any other weapon. Everything went into my pistol. I was running with the pistol and the first shotgun for majority of the game. I changed out into that burst rifle that you were talking about. So I changed out my shotgun for that burst rifle at one point. Fought 2 mobs with it. It took way too much goddamn ammo to like, because it wasn't upgraded, like it did damage, but it wasn't like insane comparatively to my pistol. So I dropped it and was like, okay, I'm just going to run pistol again. I'm going to grab the shotgun just as a secondary, just in case. Ran majority of the game that way. And then when you get I don't know how to describe it. I called it a Gauss rifle at first or whatever, you know, but it's just like it's that long rifle that shoots the big ass fucking explosive rounds or whatever, you know, like, and that thing, like, I think I found 4 rounds for it, like,
I think I got that.
you know, something like that. I used it in that Eliza fight, and it was sick because it was like it was the first time I had ever shot it at that point or whatever, you know. In phase 2, when she changes the arena down to the small amount, like you were talking about, and it has like the pool of water underneath, and it's just like that really tiny little arena. So you're dealing with wave after wave after wave of small, you know, like one shot, you know, one charge shot style enemies with your pistol. Meanwhile, dealing with her big open stomach, you know, like, you know, big orange blob thing in there or whatever. And I'm like killing the enemies. I'm picking up ammo as I'm going. I'm trying to reload, take as many shots at the, you know, the center of mass thing on her that I could. And it just wasn't. And again, you know, with the little, you know, health indicator, it's just like orange. And I'm like, and it got overwhelming. And again, this was like a panic moment where I just like, I hit my 2 key. I switched over to that Gauss rifle, and I was like, I have no idea what this thing does, but it, you know, like, every single round of this thing is its own inventory slot, so surely it's got to be good. You know, charge that bitch up and just bang, you know, and just one shot, and it killed it. You know, and then cutscene played. And I was like, oh, thank God, you know, and like, but yeah.
That's I should have used that rifle there, because I never got around to using it. Mainly because I was going to use it on the last boss. And I was like, oh, the rounds take up a slot. Yeah. Well, never mind that. Then that's almost not worth it, and so on. But on my run, pretty much what I had is I had the pistol, the shotgun, and I used that secondary machine gun, because the first machine gun has the auto lock one, which was kind of cool, but it was kind of a little bit weak on damage and so on like that. But what I did, by the time I was done, I maxed out the damage on all 3 of those guns, and then I pretty much got pretty close. I think I maxed the charge out on the pistol, and then I actually think I maxed the charge out on the shotgun as well too. Yeah. And then beyond that, like the shotgun is like, why does it have a stability one? Like, what the am I going to need stability for on a shotgun if I'm going to shoot at point blank range? So I thought that was a strange one. And even the clip, I didn't. The only thing that was kind of nice is if you did the clip, is it could save you a little bit more inventory space, but like a lot of times it'd only go up by 1. I think I got the shotgun to 4, which was kind of cool and so on. And then the machine gun, I did upgrade that one's clip too, because then you could hold a lot more in there. But I actually did like that machine gun quite a bit with the charge shot. You know, I call it a machine gun. It's more like a glorified rifle, but
Yeah, and even the pistol. So like the pistol fully upgraded is the shit, dude. Like, I mean, not only is it doing like a shit ton of damage, you know, like when you have your damage all the way maxed out, but that charge ability increase or whatever, paired with full max clip and stability and all the, you know, all the other things that are associated with it, paired with a mouse, you know, like, you know, it's just like headshot, and it's so fast, you know, because like I can get 3 rounds off in probably the same amount of time I could get 2 rounds off at the start of the game, you know, like it's that fast. And that thing has the ability to pierce too, so like you can, so those one shot headless enemy types or whatever, in Eliza's fight for that matter, like I would run to her. They would all culminate around me, you know, and I'd start kiting them. And inevitably, they'd all just kind of fall in line with each other as they're chasing me. So I'm holding S. I'm running towards myself, you know, the camera, but my camera's facing Eliza. And I would run to the end of the room, and they'd all be kind of in line. And I would just do one charge shot, and like 6 of them would just fall over, you know. And it's just like, fucking hell yeah. You know, like same ammo that way, too, you know. So.
Yep, and you get an achievement for that, too. Yeah. And funny enough, though, is... when you get to the total last boss and you battle him out there, and he keeps doing these teleporting things and so on like that. When I was first playing, I was like, dude, I tried twice and I kept losing. I'm like, dude, but because you go charge, and then like right when you're about ready to fire, he teleports. You're like, dude, like, come on. And I was like, I would miss shotgun ammo, I would miss pistol ammo, I would miss machine gun ammo. And I did the thing where I was all like, well, I'm saved here. Like, they got this ability that I can just restart my stuff. I literally took out the other pistol, which doesn't have a charge, the shotgun that doesn't have a charge. I kept the machine gun, I think, because it was still fast enough. So I just fully upgraded the shotgun, the pistol for all the main things that they needed. The other ones, the non-charging ones, Dude, and then I stormed that last boss battle because, ironically, when the other pistol and the shotgun are fully upgraded, they do way more damage than the charge guns.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, but they shoot double rounds at the same time, so you blow through ammo like nobody's business. But like, dude, it just did. Like, I would be like, ba-bum, 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 next round, ba-bum, 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 next round, next round. Dude, it went by so much faster than the charge pistol and the charge shotgun.
Really?
It was really like a night and day difference for that last part.
So the final boss easily was my hardest point of the game. I died probably four or five times in that fight, and mostly because it phases. You know, there's like multiple phases throughout that whole fight and whatnot. Mostly at the final phase, and again, I think it's because I cleared the arena of all the ammo that's there. I cleared, you know, all this type of stuff. And it's funny that you say about like the charge shot stuff, because arguably that was the problem, you know, is how long it takes to get those fire, and every shot missed is, again, it's a fucking heartache. It's like, God damn it. You know, like, how am I going to get through this now? You know, like, so, but what saved me in that fight at the very end is, so I use up all my ammo. I'm aiming at him. He's at red health. I still have that fucking Gauss rifle thing on my back, and final boss charge shot, you know, take him out. Hell yeah, dude. So the only experience that I had with that super powerful weapon that you get at some point in the game is both the last two bosses, you know. So.
Yeah, because that was the theory. I'm like, maybe I'll take that, and then I was like, I did the thing instead of like, I'm just gonna switch out the other guns and see what happens. And when I did, it was like, did that, upgrade them all the way, and then because then you just go up and just go, you know, when he's just standing there, just take the pistol out and go bam, 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 like 5 times in the head. Oh, teleports, switch over, bam, 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 and it's like, dude, that thing did massive damage. And then the shotgun fires 2 rounds at once, so it's just like boom, boom, boom. You know, and just, I mean, I kid you not, I stormed through that. Now, granted, I would not think that would work very well. Maybe on a New Game Plus, because you would already have a little bit more currency. You would not want to use those in the regular game, though. I feel like they would eat ammo a little bit too fast. I don't know. Maybe, I'm not saying you couldn't. Like, I bet you the game's designed that if you wanted to use those guns, you could. You know, because I think that was kind of how it was. It's almost like they gave you an option. Like, do you not like this charge thing? Well, guess what? Here's a different way to play the game. You know, I felt like that was sort of what they were at first, and that's why I didn't really use them. I'm like, well, that's just. But as I said, like it was really at the end. I was kind of like, man, I'm just having such a hard time trying to get these charge shots off on them. Let's give the other ones a go. And then, as I said, I had no problem because I was able to go through the boss twice in a row, see both endings. You know, it's just like, oh, cool.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that when I get back to, because I'm so deep into the game and New Game Plus cycle right now that fuck it, I'm just gonna finish it, you know. I'm really curious to see how that encounter is gonna go for me now being in New Game Plus and likely having the opportunity to really upgrade the rest of my weapons, you know, the way that I wanted to in the first run. But again, I think like based off just like balance of the way that currency works and its drops and, you know, like as you're opening up boxes and whatnot, I think that the balance is so good that I didn't, it's not like I had my weapon fully upgraded quarter of the way through the game, you know? And I think that balancing is really cool. Because now like I said, New Game Plus, I got to bring all my already upgraded shit with me. Now I get to focus on the new stuff that I didn't really get a chance to really experience in the last run. And I get to do it for the full game. I don't have to, like, you know, grab the Gauss rifle and only have 2 opportunities to use it, you know, like, you know, or whatever. So
yeah, you can pull it out on all kinds of, like, you know, different boss encounters and so on like that, you know. And then you'll be able to get whatever that third ending is for the New Game Plus, which would be kind of cool because, it's kind of interesting because both they have an A and a B ending, and they are actually quite, I mean, strange enough, kind of like they're both very uniquely different from each other, yet still it kind of seems like the outcomes could never be fixed. But I want to see what that the ending is, like, you know, because everything kind of has this loop feel to it, like it's just the cycle keeps happening over and over. And I guess one thing we never really touched on, we kind of mentioned in the background, but like the other main mechanic, I guess, that ties into everything else here is you have one more perk system, and it's when you pick up the essence of people. And I didn't even realize this for like a while. I just kind of you'd go up and like absorb somebody's essence. I didn't know what he's doing. Like, okay, data pad, whatever. There it is. Like, we need to collect this just for mission's sake. And then at one time I pressed the pause menu or whatever, and I flipped over and I was like, oh, these people's essence that I pick up are giving me perks. I did not even know this.
Yep.
And it's like, some of them do like, oh, this one does more damage when you do fire attacks. This one does more damage for headshots and things of that nature. One was the one for melee really helped me out a lot. I did like that because they said, yeah, when in doubt, punch your way through to victory. And that worked more often than one would think, because at first the melee was like, yeah, right. This is like the knife in Resident Evil 2, like 26, stabs to kill a zombie. Yeah, forget this. That's going in the box.
Yep.
Where once I got the melee upgrade, it's like, oh, six punches or maybe 5 or 6 punches kills an enemy. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yep. And I want to touch briefly on that when it comes to collecting essences. A couple different things. One's very mechanical, wireframey. The other one's like about the implications of what extracting essences actually means within world and whatnot. So like the wireframey, like mechanical side of it, it's really shitty that they put an achievement centered around this. That you have to pick up all the essences. Yeah, there are a couple of achievements that are like this. This one in particular, it wants you to pick up all the essences throughout the whole game. But in order to do it, you have to find an old traveler, which we'll get to story stuff here in a bit to kind of explain that portion. But you find like an old traveler yourself, more or less, and you can like extract that essence, and then it applies to your body, or like however, you put it in your storage, whatever in world thing is happening. But anyway, so like you apply it to your body, more or less, and you can only have 3 of them at any given time. I wish that there was a storage system for these things, because I missed the last 2 because the passive abilities weren't better than what I already had. So I'd never pick them up, which doesn't apply to the achievement, which is stupid. It's really fucking stupid.
Yeah, because I thought the same thing too. I thought as long as I interacted with them, that was all I needed to do. Because I interact, but like literally, I almost want to say like the last 3 or 4 of them were like not that great comparatively. Like, and that's a lot of times why I'm not the biggest fan of a perk system like that. It's kind of like, and the main reason why I always think a perk system is kind of a little bit like annoying is because generally some abilities are always just so much better than other ones. It's like, well, the other ones are pretty much pointless. I'm going to use for my example, I know you haven't really played this as much, but Resident Evil 6, because they swapped out like the upgrade system of 4 and 5 for a perk system. And I hate to sort of say it like if you only get 3 options, well, guess what? I want strong handgun, strong health, and or whatever, strong damage, strong health, and strong whatever, and everything else. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe doing a little bit more damage to like the blue zombie over the red zombie is nice, but not nice enough to be in the top 3 spots. So like 90% of the perks are just kind of useless because of that. And that's why I always think that system's kind of it's kind of weak. I think it can work fine for maybe like an online game, but not for like a single player game. And it's just kind of dumb that in this one you can't just collect them and so on like that. I think what they want you to have story wise is because you kind of collect these things like almost like they're like people's like memories, like Soma and whatnot. And it's kind of funny like when you switch them out, you hear the person go like, no,
don't give me. You like physically because you're physically deleting them.
You're like deleting them.
I was gonna make that comment about like how similar to Soma this is, dude. Because like there really is. There's some existentialism, like what does it mean to be human? Like stuff floating around in this game for sure. Dude.
And I know it meant to make you feel sad that you're deleting them. Like screw you, you didn't have that good of a perk. Get a better perk next time. Maybe I'll keep you alive. Exactly. And then of course the very very last perk, I remember like it just pops up as a bunch of letters and numbers and so on. I'm like, oh no, you're not doing that to me. Pull out my phone. Let's see what that perk is.
Yeah.
That is too important to not like be able to know what you are. I'm not randomly going to take something. It's not going to be like the weird perks that are in like Parasite Eve 2 that like you have no idea what they do unless you look them up.
Exactly. Like yeah.
If I have to have a strategy guide to know what that is, like that's kind of seems a little bit goofy.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's very much like the mechanical side of essences. The reality side of things, we never see how a traveler actually extracts an essence. However, when we come across Veronica at the end of the game or whatever, which we'll get to story-wise, but seeing like her head, her spine, all of her nerve endings and whatnot. So basically, like what happens is like we're going into the past. We're trying to extract these essences to bring them back to the future to preserve humanity. It's a fucking Soma story basically, But the way that it happens, like in the actual world, is like the traveler will find that person. in the past, and she like holds her hand out and like this like Wolverine style like arm like mechanical like finger tendril sharp knife looking things like come out of her arm.
Almost
like,
still kind of Venom like as well too, where it feels like the symbiote absorbing.
Yeah. And you never see it happen, but she always like she just like puts her hand on the thing's head and then the camera kind of pans off and like, you know, and then it's the next scene or whatever. I'm so curious what this thing's actually doing, because it's like it's killing them in to an extent, you know, but it's just like it's like removing their head and everything, you know. Like I'm not entirely sure what extracting an essence really is, but apparently it's horrifitic. You know,
yeah,
like,
and apparently we only have enough hard drive storage for 3 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's that old 80s, you know, Soviet technology, man.
Yeah.
Things on cassette tape, you know.
Another thing I was kind of curious about is because of these essence things, is as you start to absorb them, and you don't really notice this at first, it just these things start happening. It's like all of a sudden it's like you'll like hallucinate and things will pop up on the screen, or you'll see things that aren't really there, and then one time they are really there, then you're like, what? Yeah. You know, so you start doing it. Reminded me a lot of Eternal Darkness, which I always, because that's a game that's like one of those perfect examples of like a survival horror game that always like stood out to me. That's like that was a very unique experience to like everything else, and that game's like very late to the party as far as like the golden age of survival horror. It almost came out like right as like they're like, these games are kind of like on their way out. You know, right before Resident Evil 4. And then, so you have a lot of these flashes and so on like that. And then I started wondering, I'm like, I think some of these things are unique to like which ones you have. And I'm not 100% sure on this, but I was wondering if some of the ones, like, does it change depending on whose essence you have with you?
I believe so. I think that is a difference. Part of which, so I text you when I finished the game and I was like, I got this random achievement called, you know, Punk's Not Dead. And it just happened to be just one of the personalities that I had on me, you know, as I finished the game. There's 3 characters that I'm not even going to attempt to try to remember like who they are or what they did or anything, but there's 3 characters that are related to each other that I know that there's a specific achievement for that. If you have all 3 of those on you at the end of the game, you get that achievement. So
I saw that too. And I know I got that Punk's Not Dead one, so maybe that was the flame one, because I think I carried that the whole time. Like, you do more damage to burning enemies. Yeah. You know, because that's always important. You know, burning the enemies anyways, it's just when in doubt, throw a firebomb down, or then you also get these other cool ones called pyres that are like pretty much proximity mines. Yeah.
Because that was my strategy, and a lot of my strategy was based off of the essences. So like to an extent, like a lot of them like don't really matter. They don't feel like they're doing all that much. However, the combo that I had, one was increased headshot damage with charge shots. The other one was increased damage altogether with shooting at on fire enemies, or enemies that are on fire. And then the third one I chose was just like the increased currency one, you know, where you just get a little more currency when you pick up stuff. So my strategy ultimately was morphed by the essences system, because what I would do initially upon first encounter with an enemy, light it on fire, first and foremost, take a couple steps back, headshot. And that paired with like a fully upgraded pistol, like enemies right now in New Game Plus on hard mode. So there is a secondary, you do unlock hard mode, but it's really nothing in New Game Plus. Still our level 1 fodder enemy or whatever, like non-big boy, 1 shot, 2 shots maybe, you know, like still, you know. So but yeah, like I said, there is some strategy stuff that you can use with essences. I just don't think it was fully fleshed out, you know. I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah, it was kind of a tacked on thing, because mine pretty much was I had flame and more damage, and then I kept the melee one, which I think I switched that out because I did have the headshot one for a while, but just because I was playing on the controller, I was like, the headshots are just not as easy to get as you would want. The guy has to be real close to you, so I was like, you know what, that melee will come in more handy, which also works good. Throw a firebomb down, just start punching. Like that actually did quite a bit of damage. And then I had the currency one forever, and then the very last one, when I looked it up, it just said randomly does double damage or whatever. I was like, like, you know what? I'm at the very end of the game practically. I switched out to that one instead of the currency one because I was like, I'm only going to probably get so much more currency. My guns are pretty much. I'm just upgrading stuff because I can, not because I need it anymore. It's like, I guess I'll have another extra clip. Why not? Or slot. So then I switched out that one because I was like, hey, double damage. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we missed on two other mechanics of this game, both of which I think are actually kind of interesting because they are centered around puzzle like. They're extremely light, but the time warp ability that you have. So as you're exploring throughout the world, occasionally you'll come across these like red flowy essence looking things that are kind of like in the environment or whatever. And basically what it's signaling to you is that there's like some orb or mass or something like it's hard to describe. It kind of looks like a black hole more or less, but you get this ability where you have this like light that comes out of the end of your gun or whatever, and as long as you can find these orbs, like you can shine this light on that thing and it'll change color, and basically it's like reversing time. So there'll be like there's like a gap in the road or something, and you see this red flowy essence thing. So you kind of follow it down, you find that orb, you shine the light on it or whatever. And basically what it's doing is it's reversing time. So like the bridge that fell out in between those two sections of road or whatever comes back up. And they used it really interesting in a couple sections. And I really wish that they would have expanded on this because like there was, because I just did it again in New Game Plus. There's a section where you have to like shine light on an orb, it raises this material up or whatever, you have to walk through this walkway, and then you have to shoot it again to lower everything back down. And then as you lower everything back down, it's also manipulating another portion of the level. So you go over to that area or whatever, you're following the red tracer thing, you go over to this other section, and then you're standing on top of like broken concrete or whatever, and you can see the orb. So you like shoot it, and like you standing on that concrete, like through the time reversal, like brings you up to the next level or whatever. So you can continue into the level. I wish they would have had more stuff like that, dude, because it was super fun. Like it was interesting enough. Like it was very rudimentary, but they could have made that a lot more. I don't know, like a lot more puzzle elements, surrounding that. I thought it would have been really cool.
Yeah, no, that was pretty neat because you just find your kind of pathway and so on like that. And then other things they would do too is this in certain battles, you would be like barrels that you could kind of create out of nowhere. And they'd keep respawning, which is always kind of interesting too. Yeah. So once again, a lot of times this game kind of gave you like just in case if all else fails, you can always create another barrel and punch the barrel and it will blow up. You might take some damage, but you'll get them all with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, they had that, and then the other tool they had was they had the one that connected the electricity together, which I remember the description for it like went away so fast that I didn't know what. I was like, oh okay, and I sat there I like overthought that puzzle so much. I was like, am I supposed to circle this thing with the thing? Well, that didn't work. Well, what the heck's going? And then it was like, oh. You connect the power to the door. Yeah, I was just like, dude, and like I mean, I thought there for a second. I was like, dude, what am I supposed to do with this thing? I could not figure that out to save my life. And the only downfall I just didn't like is that like it would jack my controller because you had to switch between them and so on like that. So sometimes I go like, you're going through a scene, you're like, oh, I need a, dang, it's so stupid that tool. Let me switch back real quick. Like, it's just like, it was kind of like almost either that second one just needed to be either like another auto button. Switch or or another button or something like that. Like I just didn't like how it kind of overlapped each other because so many times it would just be like, oh, wrong one, and so especially if you need to create a barrel and all of a sudden you're shooting the stupid electricity thing out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it would always revert back to whatever you did not need, I felt like. So,
I do have one other brief comment about level design in particular, and anybody that enjoys the original Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Dark Soul, like this style level design, dude, like when we were in the Steelworks, and it's right before, it's like where we learn that we have to get the gravity boots, like we come across that first landing pad and we can't do anything with it because we don't have the gravity boots. So we enter into that building and the door on the other side's locked, and then we have to go back outside where we just came from, and then there's another path, to go through the building underneath or whatever, That whole section, dude, like from that moment of like leaving that safe room to entering in the same building, granted a floor below or whatever, you know, entering into there and slow walk in, methodically taking out room to room to room and blah blah blah. And it took me a good 40 minutes, 45 minutes or so, you know, to kind of get through this area just to pop out, you know, somewhere else. And at this point, like, you're so lost in the sauce because you're so immersed, you know, into this title, that by the time like I got to the end of this section and I opened up that door, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm back in the safe room again. Oh, and the map starts to formulate in your head, and you're like, oh, that's how that connects, and oh, that's a shortcut there, and you can do this. And but it's fucking Dark Souls like to a T, dude. And it's perfect. I love, it's probably one of my favorite parts of this game was its level design that did that had, it used the same space, but it looped around on itself, and you could open shortcuts and you could open doors and this, that, and the other, you know, and like, it was just so beautifully done. I wish that this game is long enough, but if there is a sequel, I hope that they continue that path. It was just so well done. I genuinely enjoyed it. Just that sudden realization of like, oh, I know where I'm at. Cool.
Yeah.
You know?
No, the looping back around and utilizing the same save points multiple times, I think is kind of good. And the fact that there's very little backtracking for the most part. Like, really, the only backtracking you do is the stuff that, because you need to go back and either get a new firebomb or drop some stuff off for the most part. You know, beyond that, though, it's like you really almost never need a backtrack. If you didn't care about picking things up or dropping things off, you could literally just keep, you know, pushing forward and you'd be totally fine.
Yep.
You know. Which, you know, you did touch on the game. Like, I will say the game did feel like it did drag a little bit. Like, and I mean, that's so common in so many things is just being able to, like, it's that thing that, like, I know people always want to have a nice full experience or something like that, but there's something always be said. It's like whenever we play those games where like they end in like 10 hours, you mostly always walk away going, man, that was perfect experience. Like, you know what I mean? Or it's like Dino Crisis 2. Once again, that game is like shy of 6 hours, but you feel so complete in that time period. Like, they felt like there's no, like, in a sense, like they picked all the right moments, and that was it. You never felt like the game ever dragged or anything like that. And then it makes you kind of want to play it again. Because I will say that was almost even the thing that was like, as great as this game was, and you're like, a new game plus be kind of fun, but like, and I know it'll go by faster, but boy, that's still a lot to go through again.
Yeah.
You know?
It really is. There's probably about, I would argue, I don't know where or how they could do it, because I think that every section of this game is necessary. I enjoy the apartment to the, you know, the steelworks to the hospital, church, blah, 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 all the way through. I think all those things are necessary. I think the things that we do in those areas could be drastically reduced, like, and especially the repeat stuff. Go to the generator room, turn on generator 1, go generator 2, turn on generator 2, just so you can open up the door. We do that twice in this game, and it burns about an hour each time. And it's like, why? You know?
Yeah, even the character comments like, I've done this before. Yeah, I'm doing it again. You know, it's like, the boss encounter, the one from the steelworks, and again, I very much agree with you that it's an evolution of itself every time you encounter it, but it's the same kind
mechanics.
Of the same thing.
It's more or less the same fight. The arena changes, you know, per fight, but really, I didn't approach it any different way from time 1 to time 2 to time 3. I treated it the exact same way. You know,
it's just run to the barrels, bring the creature, shoot the barrel, shoot the creature, repeat.
Yeah. So there's definitely some padding here. There's a reason why I missed a handful of the last like quarter of this game's achievements, I feel, is because I was getting antsy and I wasn't dying very often, and it wasn't challenging enough outside of the bosses, and I was just like, I didn't want to like finish it just to finish it, you know, but I wanted to finish it just to say that I did, so I could see what New Game Plus was, what's unlockable, this, that, and the other, you know. So I got antsy, you know, and I missed like 2 notes, or you know, 2 of the traveler's logs or whatever, you know, like things like that.
I missed one of those traveler's logs. I don't know where it was, but I got like, it says like I got like 98% of them or whatever. Whatever, you know, because I'll probably say by about the hospital, I felt like I started, and once again, it's not that it's bad, but it's just, I felt like I got a little bit of like a burnout sort of by then, where it just felt, okay, it's still cool, but we're just kind of chugging along by this point. Mine
was the church section. Like,
yeah,
when I recognized, about 30 minutes into the church section, and I realized that, like, oh, this is going to be a whole other, because I thought that was going to be the finale, you know, like, and then having, like, running into, like, the you know, like, having to open this door, but you can't open it from this angle, so now I got to go this way and work my way all through the level again, loop back around to open the door, get back to the safe room. When I started to recognize that, you know, I was like, oh shit, like, this section's going to be another 2-3 hours, you know, like, easy, you know, and then the Eliza fight, and then, like, you know, all that, and then, you know, dealing with what comes directly after that and whatnot too. Yeah, there's definitely a time burn in this game that drags a little bit too long for my liking. I don't think it's awful, but it definitely, I think it took some hits, in my opinion, you know, for me, in terms of, like, my overall thoughts of the game. It's just a little bit too long. So
yeah, it's because I will say, it sounds weird, but that Eliza fight almost was the perfect place for it to be the end.
I thought it was.
Yeah,
when I was texting you, I was like, I think I'm on the final boss. You know?
Yeah,
like, nope.
Like that felt like that was the perfect place for it to end, and then it had its Return of the King, multiple extra endings type going on there. It's really the same way that I feel almost like Conscript. Once again, both, you know, Conscript is an extremely good game, but it did have that little bit of a drag. And sometimes I feel like, even though, okay, don't get me wrong, like, this company, Bloober Team, obviously they did the Silent Hill 2 project. I guess it's one of those ones, like, they did, like, that's when you know, like, you made it in life.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, so, but at the same time, they still feel like Young Buck Team in a sense. And it feels like that kind of is one of those, like, there's like those core things that I think a lot of times, like, and once again, it's hard to call this game indie, even though I'm using this term in a sense or something like that, you know, because they are, once again, they're pretty well established. After you make Silent Hill 2, I don't know how anybody can call you indie anymore. But in a sense, it still has that somewhat indie vibe hanging on to this one here. Like, almost like it's like, hey, this is our own kind of personal project we're doing on the side, and it just finally released. But lots of times length is always an issue. I notice a lot of times in, like, indie games, is that, like, they make them sometimes too long, thinking that makes it better in a weird way. And the other one too is a lot of times sometimes they'll make them too hard, thinking that makes it better. Like, oh man, I just want to make the most hardcore game ever, and then they'll make it, like, almost like stupidly ridiculous. You know, like, dude, no. If you know, a Konami or a Capcom game was really hard at a certain part, it was designed in a perfect way for it. Where you just designed it to be hard for no real reason except for to be hard.
Yeah.
So
I had to find it real quick. So, like, we were just talking about Eliza. So again, it very much feels like it's the end of the game. You know, like, it's a big final finale, big horrific looking boss looking thing. You find the Pathfinder, you find the blah blah blah. I wrote you a text and I said, pretty sure I just fought the final boss, which was the most Resident Evil boss if I've ever seen one. Ha ha ha. And then, like, the cutscene plays. I'm expecting to see credits, so, you know, I'm, like, getting ready to, like, snap a photo for you to say, you know, like, I did it. You know, at the end of the game. That was at 3:16 p.m. At 3:53 p.m. I write you back and I go, this game is so good at making you think it's about done. Then nope, another gameplay section. It's like, Jesus Christ.
And it goes on longer right there, and once again, there's some interesting stuff that happens, but it is kind of like that. Like, you're like, now you're definitely feeling like, okay, let's get this over with. I see where we're going. We're leading towards another boss battle, and this is where probably the biggest, I guess, spoilers were if you didn't play the game, you know. But I don't think it really ruins it necessarily, because seeing is believing, not necessarily hearing. Yeah. But you do come to the warden, and then you kind of realize, you're like, yo, warden, like, what's going on here? Like, and something like that. Like, you know, I've learned all this stuff. You find this body hanging in there, and the medical chick, what's her name?
Veronica.
Warwanica, yeah, because it's not Veronica, it's Warronica or whatever.
Yeah, that's with the W.
Yeah, and which that I will say, the only thing about this game is because these games are these characters are so Polish. I kind of wish they had accents. I felt the fact that they're all speaking in American is kind of like one of those. It sort of took me slightly out of it, because it's like. Yeah. Like, I don't think of the character being from this area when you do that. And that's always an issue I have a lot of times in movies. I always feel like, no, you should have accents if you're going to be... Like, if it's a war movie and it takes place in the Soviet Union, everybody should have an accent, you know? It's weird when they don't. I get confused. Or it's like, you know, like Where Eagles Dare, where Clint Eastwood's like, you know, it's like, I'm speaking German now, but I'm speaking like Clint Eastwood. You're like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
You know? But whatever, like you realize that, like, oh, this chick that you've been talking to and she's been helping you out and everything like that, like, no, that's actually who you are, and you have her essence for some reason copied into you in the future, and she's in the past version, and all this kind of stuff. And the warden's just like trying to make you in a sense, the next best person to carry on her legacy and so on. And you're finding all the other ones. And for some reason, you decided to turn on. I don't know. It did get a little bit convoluted there towards the end. Like you didn't want to work because you got kind of like bummed out that you realized that you were her and whatnot.
Yeah. So yes, there's a lot of, and this is why I question. Like, I wouldn't take everything I'm saying as fact because like I'm still trying to figure this game out in my head. Your character is Veronica, like Spence just said, we are the essence of Veronica. The warden character that we come across that sends us along to all these various places that we've been talking about to go collect essences, we find out is actually this being called the Pathfinder. And what a Pathfinder is essentially it's a person, a machine, like God knows exactly what, but it works directly for this thing called the Collective. We still, I don't know what the hell the Collective is. It's some, it's probably some government thing. Whatever, who knows? Whoever the Collective is.
It's probably that guy from Half-Life.
Yeah, exactly. It's a G-Man. Yeah, 100%. But anyway, so he sends the Collective sends the Pathfinder to open time portals to go back into time to collect people's essences to bring them to the future to more or less preserve humanity in some fucked up way. I still can't figure out the warden, the Pathfinder, whatever you want to call him. I don't understand the relationship to Veronica that he has. I don't know if it's a lover, if it's a family member, if it's a, like some, regardless, this man obsesses over this woman named Veronica. So essentially what is happening in the game is that you, as the quote unquote, the traveler, you are one of many, 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 many copies of the same exact thing of him doing experiments with Veronica's essences, trying to bring her back to life in a perfect form, more or less, in his image or whatever. So what we experience as the traveler, as we're going through and we're picking up essences and we're attaching it to ourselves. Spence alluded to it a little bit earlier about like our character starts to go crazy. Like every time like we put one of these essences in us, she starts having these like crazy like mind memory things and like flashbacks of like that person's life and like things like that and all that. And all of it's like super, super confusing, like I really like am having a hard time wrapping my head around it. But more or less like what this amounts to is that we find out that, the Pathfinder is trying to make a clone of Veronica to live forever with him in the current future where we exist. Now there's some like time things that are going on where us as the traveler learn that in the future, and we go back to the past to essentially tell Veronica, hey, don't fuck with this guy because he's going to kill you. I've seen what happens to you in the future, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I was saying is like the extraction of the essence, because when we come across Veronica in the past, it's her full body. She's wearing her glasses. She's like some little science nerd, looking character. But when we see her in the future, when we finally when the big unveiling of like, here's who you are as the player character or whatever, we see Veronica and it's like, it's literally just her head, it's her spine and like all of her like, like
just like a torso and head, just like, hanging from like a rack almost. And, in an enclosed, like, cryo around him is cryo. Yeah.
So creepy, dude. So creepy. So what we're faced against, and I never actually asked you, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because I'll learn live right now. But when we get to the end of the game, we essentially have two choices in New Game. It's either help the traveler or not, or sorry, help the Pathfinder or not, in his situation with Veronica. And what a lot of this game boils down to is repeats of cycles of things that just occur over and over again because of time paradoxes and going back in time, trying to correct things, fucking things up in the future and whatnot. I'm hyper curious to see what choice you made at the end of this. Because for me, I decided to allow the traveler to live and repeat the cycle.
Yeah, and when you do that one, you get the ending where you see the traveler in the future and he's like dying out in a sense, and then Veronica is starting to turn.
Yeah,
she's starting to go blind, everything like that.
So in my ending, like I allow the Pathfinder to live. He opens up a time portal with his little hook thing or whatever, and him and Veronica disappear into the past.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Essentially restarting the cycle over again, because when they make it back to the past, Veronica gets infected. He starts to freak out. I gotta save you. Extracts the essence. Blah blah blah. History repeats itself, and he starts creating travelers. Which is us. So for you, how did your ending go?
So, I started with I shot him in the head the first time and ended it there. And then she gets all like, bummed out, which is weird. It's like she gets bummed out that herself, me, made that decision, It's like, I can't believe my future self would do this. Well, you're not. Hold on a second there. I can't believe that my other Soma body that I let live in the deep blue sea made these decisions. So you do that, and then she takes that like sickle, which I think is really actually cool, the sickle of time, and cuts through and goes back. And then the extra ending is that Veronica, she runs into the room to there's that like hillbilly looking guy that you see earlier on with the beard and everything. Like I can't remember what his name is off that. And he's got like the flannel on and everything. Hillbilly, probably just standard Russian uniform. So there's that guy. She goes to his apartment back there and whatnot like that. And then she goes to hug him and everything like that. And then it cuts to her eyes, and you can see her eyes are already starting to glaze over. So it actually had, ironically, both endings, though they're completely different ways of going about it. They still had the same thing, that like the time recycled itself, and they didn't. And she pretty much was going to get infected no matter what, except for in one, of course, the Pathfinder Warden is able to kind of recycle her there, where in the other one, the Warden's not alive, so she goes back to the dude, which obviously I think that's where when you have the three essences, I think that, because that dude, you get his essence, I want to say. So whatever his essence was, I can't remember. Obviously, it wasn't important enough to keep. And
that's what I would argue to our listeners is like, we're probably poorly explaining this, but this experience, like, as you experience it over the course of the 15 to 20-ish hours that you're going to play this game, like, it will be impactful at the exact moment, that things are happening. I think the long-term lasting effects of a lot of the secondary characters in this game really don't do much for me. They're not insanely memorable, but like, again, in the moment, they're like, oh, that makes sense. Like, okay, that's who that character is and whatnot. What I thought was interesting about the death ending, when you decide as the Pathfinder to end the cycle, by killing the Pathfinder, again, because we're dealing with like time, and then future and past and whatnot, like in the cutscene that I watched of your character, the traveler killing the Pathfinder, is just like you essentially just fucking, you just fucking keel over and die yourself, because now the Pathfinder doesn't exist anymore, so you don't exist anymore, leaving Veronica to her own vice to just let time play out as it would. The third ending, from what I understand, is the way to break the cycle. So I'm actually curious, when I get to the end of my New Game Plus cycle, if I will even have this option. I assume I will,
Yeah, because I kind of read up on it afterwards. So it appears when you do a New Game Plus, you get a third choice. And that's technically the true ending in a sense.
Yeah, and that's where Veronica and the Traveler both leave the Pathfinder behind, go back in time themselves, and start a new life, more or less, which is really interesting, because now we have, and again, this kind of goes back to the Simon thing, Simon 1, Simon 2, and Soma, it's like, okay, so we have real life Veronica, and we have this clone of her in this robotic body that I assume is a robotic body anyways, in the past now, and like, that's supposed to be the happy ending per se in this really fucked up title, you know, like, the other two endings, like, are you're going to repeat the cycle, or Veronica's going to die, or both can go in the past, and it really doesn't tell you what happens beyond that, and it leaves it up to player interpretation, which I think is cool. I think it leaves a lot open for a sequel here, you know, to like really fully explore this world and, you know, what's going on. But I think that by the end of this game, it leaves so many questions open in my mind that I want to know more. I would love to see a DLC or something, you know, like something with this, just to further kind of flesh it out. I think the other side too is like in my researching of any title, like I love the long, you know, 3-hour critique videos that exist on YouTube on certain games and whatnot. That doesn't exist here because nobody's done it yet, you know.
Yeah. It was one of those ones. The game's only like 2 weeks old by now or something like that, and here we are doing our like 3-hour spiel on it almost.
You know, but. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think the story it's interesting enough that it kept me interested throughout the whole game. But I think that as compared to like Silent Hill Shattered Memories that we just played, where its story really kept me driven and the gameplay was kind of crap, you know, like this is kind of polar opposite. I think that its story is still good enough that it kept me interested, and I loved reading each note, and I loved seeing each log and hearing the voices and, you know, like trying to piece together all that shit. Same time, I think it's it's kind of convoluted, and it's hard to think about, you know, time travel in general, you know, like where we exist in our realm in this world and blah blah blah, you know, like time travel is like really hard to conceptualize, and I don't think that this game did a fantastic job at explaining itself, but it did well enough, and I think I have somewhat of a semblance of like what this game's about. I think in general, as its like overall scope, it's about existentialism. It's about repeating of cycles. It's about, you know, again, I think this very much has the Soma question of what does it mean to be human? You know, like what does that actually mean? You know, so there's a lot of really cool things happening here, you know, within its storytelling, its game design, its mechanics, everything like that. It's robbing from a lot of different titles, but I think it does it eloquently. And I'm fully recommending this game to anybody that, you know, likes Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, you know, like what we've been talking about this whole episode. So
yeah, no. I overall thought this was pretty darn dialed in, and even with the story, that is kind of the part that's a little bit more convoluted in a way, and maybe its weakest element. Not saying it's not cool, not saying it's not interesting. It's just one of those ones where it's kind of you are sort of piecing things together, and then even like it's so weird, like it's like 3/4 in this game. Like the game starts to have like these long ass cutscenes all of a sudden. It doesn't have any of these before. It's just like it was like, dude, that cutscene was like 8 minutes long for this game. It's like probably 8 minutes was the total of all cutscenes in the beginning of the game. You know, but yeah, no, it's still cool, and it still gives those interesting kind of, you know, questions it leaves you with. And I think the world, for the fact that it is like this, you know, section where like you kind of wonder what happened to it, but a lot of stuff's never truly explained. It's like you get the notes and you get the tidbits and so on. Where I feel like I hate to, if it was a Resident Evil game, you would see the whole story like it was a movie, you know, and that's how it would want to tell you and so on like that. Where this one I feel kind of wants you to sort of piece it together yourself, you know, with the little bits of information you kind of get, and. You know, it's one of those ones, I feel like it's probably a one and done game. I'd be kind of surprised if there was a sequel. I could see taking the elements of it and creating another style of horror, you know, game, you know, using kind of a lot of the gameplay mechanics and so on like that, and just giving it a fresh, you know, new adventure and so on. But, you know,
Well, I think in terms of a sequel, I think it'd be interesting to do a prequel from the eyes of the Pathfinder. I think that would be cool. Super interesting, you know. So anyways, I was thinking about that last night a bit too, of just like what sequel potential would be for this, and that's pretty much the best thing I could come up with is prequel from 1980s era through the eyes of the Pathfinder, really dive into who is the collective, how did he become the Pathfinder, how did he do that, like all, like how did he become who he is, because by the time we run into him in the game, for the very first time, it's like he doesn't even have concept of what time is because he's been there for so fucking long, like so there's a lot surrounding that, that I'm hyper interested in. So I think there's a bit more story that could be told here.
Yeah, no, I like the prequel idea because I wouldn't mind actually seeing like this world. It'd be cool to see this world like, okay, here's fully functional Poland all of a sudden, and then it's 1980, and then all of a sudden 81 comes, and boom.
Yeah, day
the
zero.
Virus starts. Yeah, you see it from there. That would be kind of neat,
Yeah.
And you start to see people slowly getting infected and seeing people turn on each other and all that kind of stuff, and just have a similar type of gameplay, but you kind of go from like, oh, at first you're kind of battling just regular people that can't handle it and so on, and then they start mutating, and then that starts to become the new thing, and you become the lone survivor in a sense. Like that would be actually kind of pretty sweet to see.
Yeah, and that's ultimately where my mind was going with that. So,
yeah, because I feel like it was like like you literally there wasn't a whole lot left here, and you pretty much went back and cleaned up the entire mess. That bio mess was taken care of.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, realistically, I still thought it was a cool experience the whole way through. There was a lot going on there. The gameplay was great, Yeah, it was one of those ones, like, it was interesting. As I said, from the start, I wasn't too sure what to expect necessarily. And then even when the challenges started to come, I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. And once I got kind of into it, it was like, okay, full steam ahead. I'm down for this experience.
Yep. Nope, very much with you on that. I called this game out quite a while ago to you, especially like even when we first started talking about doing a podcast together. I was like, oh, this Cronos game, because like, and inevitably I want to do Dead Space as well. I would love to do Dead Space 1 and 2, and then do a co-op session with Dead Space 3.
Yeah, I really want to play 3 because that was the only one I haven't fully played. So
yeah. So like I had a feeling that I would enjoy this game from the get-go. Was a little worried at the start of the game, it's just like I don't know, but no, I'm glad that it really started to open up. And I think that, like I said, I'm already more than halfway through New Game Plus cycle right now. I'm very likely just going to go complete it again. Beyond that, I mean, I don't think I'll have any desire to play it again, beyond that, outside of grabbing the notes and getting the achievements and doing the things, I'll play this again in the future at some point, probably the same cycle that I have done with Dead Space, every couple of years or whatever. But I think this stacks up well against pretty much anything else in its class, it definitely has its downfalls in some regard, but, in terms of an over-the-shoulder, action-based, style survival horror game, that has a little more hardcore elements than a traditional, like, I think that this is one of the better ones out there, and I fully recommend it. Full price, get it on sale, whatever. It's worth your time. I definitely think it's worth your time.
Yeah, no, I think it's a cool one, and yeah, it's like if you like The Thing, you like Resident Evil, you like Dead Space, of course, and Metroid, it's definitely got all those elements rolled into one. And then if you like also like Soviet architecture and all that kind of stuff and that world design. But yeah, well, that sounds like it. Any more extra final thoughts on the game and the experience and all the fun stuff there?
No, I think I pretty much talked about everything that I wanted to, anyways, about it.
I think so. Yeah. If 2.5 hours we didn't get it, well, that'd be but that goes to show that there's a lot going on here. It'll make you think and all that kind of stuff. So
here, I'll pull our stats just real quick, just so audience can see. So this game took me 16 hours, 34 minutes, and 30 seconds. I had 19 deaths. I allowed 34 enemies to merge and saved 45 times. Got ending B and a rank C. Mine was pretty darn close to that. I think it was like 16 hours, something like that.
I think I have my saves are a little bit more, but that's because like if I changed my inventory around, I would literally be like, well, I made some changes here, but I might as well save. I'm right in the same room.
Yep.
You know, and then I think I had like 40 something enemies merged somehow, some way. I thought I was pretty good about taking care of it, but obviously, you know, I guess if they probably start merging, that's probably where it triggers it. It's probably not like because a lot of times you just go up and blast them and be like, no, you stop that now.
Yeah.
You know, but I guess that doesn't count for that score there, you know, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see, like, you can't let them merge to get that score to like an A or something like that.
Maybe, I'd be curious if there's actually like, I guarantee there's an A rank. I'm curious if there's like an S rank, you know, to this game or whatever, and if it's time based, if it, you know, like what it's centered around. So
yeah, time's probably the main one if I had to guess, but those other factors might have an effect on it too. But
so I'd argue, because I'm like I said, I'm in the hospital section right now. I'm arguing I probably have gotten there in about 4.5 hours, something like that. Like I am speeding through this. Like it's significantly faster than my last run.
Yeah, if I had to guess, you'll probably beat the game in about 7 hours, give or take, maybe 8 maximum. You know, so probably you literally do it about half the time.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I was kind of thinking too. It's like, okay. You know, I don't know if it's well, just like get it down to like under 3 hours.
Yeah, I sincerely doubt that. But that is, I guess, one more quick comment I wanted to make. So at the end of the game, you do unlock another difficulty mode, and it's hard mode. Fuck a new game, quote unquote, cycle in hard mode. Fuck that. Nope, no, thank you. But in new game plus hard mode, like. I really can't tell the difference, dude. It just like it feels like the end of my first run, you know, like where everything just dies so quickly and blah blah blah. Like I have zero challenge in this run, you know. So I'm not entirely sure what hard mode really does, other than enemies have more health, they output more damage. Like that's the only thing I can think. But when you have a fully upgraded suit and a fully upgraded pistol at the start of a new game plus cycle in hard mode, like you can't get better than that, you know, like, so, you know, with those things. So anyways, that's just one brief comment I wanted to make about difficulty. So, well,
I do have to give this game credit. I like the fact that you can play New Game Plus on the newly unlocked hard mode, because that doesn't happen in a lot of games. A lot of games will give you like, cool, here's a hard mode, professional mode, extreme mode, whatever. Well, you got to restart from the very beginning. It's kind of like, I don't know, got that kind of time on my hands. Thank you. But yeah, which I like this one. It's like, well, that's kind of cool, because then it's like, I can play a New Game Plus, but it gives me kind of a little bit more extra challenge, even if it's not extremely more. It's, you know, it does give you a little bit more reason. So I think that's kind of cool. I thought you unlocked something else too afterwards. Maybe that was about it. I know you get our costume, you get like the white costume or whatever. Yeah,
there's some skins and stuff for sure. But yeah, no, the main thing I noticed was the New Game Plus and being able to keep all your shit, which is pretty neat. Except for attachments. That's one thing that doesn't transfer. So, and I guess it's because they're kind of pivotal, like game moments or whatever. But like the attachment for like the health checker thing, you know, that you put on your pistol and stuff. Like, so you don't start with that stuff. So, same thing with like, I have pyres in my inventory, but I don't physically, I can't like craft them yet, you know? so that's interesting, you know, and different. So
that's a couple things there, but still, even so, I'm glad it has that New Game Plus mode, because that's always another bummer too, is when games don't have that. Like, it always feels like it kind of, you know, it's sort of like when we played like almost even like Alone in the Dark, like the new Nightmare, like you got nothing at the very end. It was just like, hey, you're done.
Yep.
You know, I mean, nothing unlocked. Yeah, no scorecard, no nothing. Like no unlockables. I don't even know if there was unlockables. I don't remember anything. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of like you want something. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, give me a reason that why I'd want to come back. But yeah. New Game Plus mode, you know, still cool that you have all that there. Good to upgrade all the stuff. That's where it would be kind of fun. I wouldn't mind just upgrading everything, but yeah, we'll see how that kind of goes, because I know Silent Hill F comes out too soon for all that, so we'll go from there.
I'm so much looking forward to that. God damn.
So we'll get ourselves in a big old Silent Hill mood and go from there. But check out Cronos, but beyond all that, you can check out all the Silent Evil podcasts on Spotify, YouTube, and even other things like Amazon Music and all those other places that it somehow, some way streams to, Apple, all that stuff. But beyond that, you can check out Old Man Orange podcast on via VHS. Till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I am Cameron.
And we'll see you some other time.